Chaos erupts in the convenience store. A woman screams like a banshee, slamming a ticket onto the counter and demanding an immediate refund. Behind the counter stands our protagonist, Seong, a mountain of calm muscle. He simply asks if she brought the receipt. The woman bristles with agitation. Why would she need proof? Seong counters with a question of his own. Why is she trying to return the cigarettes in the first place? That struck a nerve. Her fury explodes. She declares that if a customer wants their money back, the seller must refund every single penny. Seong remains unfazed. In a steady voice, he explains that he requires a receipt to verify the purchase actually came from this store. Her irritation spikes to dangerous levels. She snaps that she doesn't have the receipt because she already tossed it in the trash. Then there can be no refund. The woman gapes at him, indignant. Is he insane? She shouts that nobody carries every document they own every time they leave the house. He holds his ground. He states that no rational person simply throws away official documents. The logic leaves the customer sputtering in confusion. He justifies his stance with cold, hard facts. He cannot simply take her word for it. There is no way to be sure she isn't trying to scam him by pretending to have bought cigarettes she found elsewhere. That was the breaking point. She screams, face red with rage, asking if he truly dares to call her a liar and a con artist to her face. Seong stands like a statue, unmoved. She accuses him of having zero respect for customers and threatens to report him to the Consumer Protection Agency. Snap. The loud crack of an electric fly swatter cuts through her screaming. An irritating insect meets its fiery end. He focuses entirely on the pest, muttering about how tired he is of these flies. He completely ignores the raging woman, which only fuels her fire. Defeated by his indifference, she storms out. She mutters that her trick failed this time, and she couldn't make a quick buck playing the victim. Seong watches the strange customer disappear into the street. He shakes his head. He never would have imagined such a petty scam, especially since cigarette prices aren't exactly breaking the bank. Time flows on. The sun sinks below the horizon, surrendering the city to the artificial glow of neon signs and streetlights. Moments later, the door chimes. It is Seong's brother, Lee Won. He strides in with a warm greeting, ready to chat. Seong asks how his day went. Lee Won smiles and assures him that everything went smoothly. Lee Won praises Seong's hard work and tells him to head home. But Seong's sharp eyes catch something. Lee Won's left eye is swollen and bruised. It looks like another fight. Lee Won admits it without hesitation, claiming he took a hit during training. Seong looks thoughtful. He comments on how amazing Lee Won is, balancing sports, free time, and intense studies all at once. His friend laughs it off, good-naturedly. He tells Seong not to be jealous, since they both manage to juggle work and study. Then, he shoots his friend a sarcastic look. Does he really enjoy getting beaten to a pulp all the time? Lee Won's eyes light up. He throws a flurry of punches at the air. He declares that the rush of battle is a sensation words just cannot describe. To him, the sport is a beautiful addiction. He insists that Seong would understand if he just stepped into the ring, even once. Lee Won reminds Seong of his past. He used to be a legend at school. He urges him to compete in MMA. Seong is skeptical. He asks if martial arts and street brawls are really the same thing. He waves it off, claiming he has no desire to return to that life, but Lee Won won't let it go. He insists that Seong has nothing to fear. He honed his body for years and possesses skills most people only dream of. Seong looks away, a shadow crossing his face. That is precisely why he knows the darkness of those battles and why he refuses to participate. Lee Won goes silent. He observes his friend closely, noticing the deep well of melancholy hidden behind Seong's stoic expression. He decides not to push his luck. If Seong feels that strongly about it, he will not force the issue. Seong apologizes for dampening the mood, but Lee Won quickly pivots, asking Seong to at least come and cheer him on. Surprised, Seong raises an eyebrow. Did his brother actually manage to organize an official match? Lee Won grins with excitement. The amateur league at the Fight Club launches this Sunday, and he is set to compete in a professional qualifying match. Seong stares at his brother, focus sharpening. He asks if he was truly accepted as a challenger. Lee Won beams with pride. If he wins this, he turns pro. Seong sighs, a hint of disappointment in his voice. He remarks that becoming a professional sounds much easier than he expected. Lee Won fires back immediately. Seong has no idea the blood, sweat, and tears it took to get this far. Seong lowers his gaze again. He admits it sounds interesting. After all, he himself had dreamed of becoming a pro fighter for a long time. His friend notices how deeply the words cut. He decides it is best to leave it there for now. Lee Won concludes with an offer. If Seong is interested, he should come watch. Seeing the violence live is far more visceral than watching it on TV. Seong nods. He will be there. After all, it might be the historic day Lee Won finally becomes a professional fighter. He rises to finish the final moments of his shift. Li Wan slaps a heavy hand on his back, grateful that he agreed to come watch the match. I will send you the coordinates in time. Later, Seong swaps his uniform for street clothes and steps out. He leaves the store behind. I will head home for now. Li Wan praises his hard work one last time, thanking him for his unwavering dedication. Stepping out of the shop, Seong lingers for a moment. His gaze drifts to the starry expanse above. Memories of the past collide with the reality of the present. He turns to leave, but his feet betray him. He halts beneath the glow of a flickering streetlight. Lost in the artificial glare, his mind wanders to a buried dream. A quiet confession slips out. I once wanted to be a professional fighter, but reality bites back. He lowers his gaze, burying the thought. It is time to rest and recharge for the next grinding shift at the store. Time passes. The day of reckoning arrives. A message from Li Wan lights up his phone. The coordinates for the battleground and the time. Scheduled for 4 o'clock. Punctuality is his code. Seong arrives precisely on the dot and scans his surroundings. He memorizes every landmark, a habit of survival, just in case he needs to find his way back. His eyes lock onto a massive sign, the Amateur Fight Club. He nods to himself. This must be the place. He watches others descend calmly into the basement, a pit of violence. Seong admits a flicker of hesitation. Does he really want to walk into the abyss? The phone buzzes. Li Wan calling. Are you at the location? Seong confirms he is standing right before the gates of the club. The matches are starting soon, Li Wan says, his voice tense. I cannot come out to meet you, just head inside. The protagonist approaches the gatekeeper. The security guard offers a polite, plastic smile. You may proceed. He descends the concrete steps. A critical thought crosses his mind. For an amateur league, the organization is chaotic. Everything feels dangerously disorganized. He justifies his presence. I intended to watch the other bouts, he thinks, but I will likely leave the moment my brother's match ends. Deeper into the underground. The light fades. Shadows lengthen. He silently prays he makes it out of here in one piece. The stairs bottom out. Seong stands before the heavy door of the club. With a steady breath, he pushes it open. The door cracks. A blinding white light stabs at his eyes. The glare of the arena lamps floods his vision. Sound explodes around him. The deafening roar of the bloodthirsty crowd. They scream for violence. They demand entertainment. In the center, 2 young warriors clash. A fierce struggle for dominance, fighting for a ticket to the big leagues. The spectacle hits Seong like a physical blow. He freezes, enchanted, watching the raw brutality between 2 strangers. One fighter spots an opening. A split-second mistake. A devastating attack charges up. He raises a fist destined to crush his opponent and seize the victory. The strike connects, unleashing every ounce of power into the adversary's chest. The opponent staggers back, a cry of pain tearing from his throat. The sheer intensity of their spirit strikes a chord. Deep within Seong, something stirs. A shiver of electric excitement races down his spine. But the battle is not over. The fighter in red gloves shakes off the crushing blow. He dodges the follow-up and launches a lethal counter. The protagonist's heart hammers against his ribs. Faster, louder. It is the thrill of returning to the world he once ran away from. Red Gloves moves in for the kill. He channels all his power into his legs. Before the enemy can blink, a thunderous kick to the neck, incapacitated in a heartbeat. The blow is too heavy to withstand. The fighter in blue shorts crumbles to the canvas, lights out, consciousness fades. The referee dives in. Stop the fight. Victory belongs to Red Gloves. The victor throws his arms to the heavens. A roar of triumph. The crowd feeds off his energy, erupting into chaos. Cheers shake the walls. The audience recognizes true skill. That was no lucky shot. It was a precision strike that ended the war in a single move. Glory washes over the winner. In the stands, spectators watch with envy, dreaming of standing in that ring, basking in even a shred of that fame. But for Seong, it is more than envy. His eyes blaze with a familiar fire. The old dream awakens. To become a professional. To ascend to the peak of Olympus and stand among the gods of the arena. It is just a spark now, a small ember in the ashes. But soon, it will become an inferno that no one can extinguish. He shakes his head, snapping back to reality. Don't get your hopes up, he tells himself. He focuses his eyes on the ring, waiting for the main reason he is here, waiting for his brother. Suddenly, a voice startles him. He spins around. Li Wan is there, geared up for war, flanked by 2 trainers ready for battle. Li Wan nudges his brother playfully, trying to lift the heavy mood. With a teasing grin, he asks the question hanging in the air. Do you still doubt my strength? But Seong snaps back, frustration evident. It is not doubt. I am simply unfamiliar with this chaotic place. When asked for his impression of the Fight Club, Seong does not hold back. He admits the atmosphere is suffocatingly tense, a heavy weight pressing down on his chest. A man named Choi cuts in, his voice sharp. No time for idle chatter. The battle is about to start. Li Wan nods, shifting instantly into focus. Before stepping away, Li Wan grips his brother's shoulder firmly. When I win today, he declares with absolute confidence, we will celebrate like kings. Xiang's expression softens just a fraction. He looks his brother in the eye and replies, I will be watching. Make it count. As they head toward the ring, Choi glances back at Xiang. That guy seems to be in peak physical condition, he notes, adding a stinging observation. He might even be a deadlier fighter than you. Li Wan scoffs at the harsh remark, but then he looks back. He notices Xiang observing the arena with a predator's focus. Contrary to his earlier words, his brother seems perfectly at home in this violent world. A knowing smile touches his lips. Li Wan realizes his brother is secretly enjoying the spectacle. He silently hopes that one day, Xiang will accept his nature and dedicate himself to the path of the fighter. Moments later, the atmosphere explodes. The announcer storms the ring, his voice booming like thunder. He screams into the microphone, commanding the crowd's attention to introduce the fresh blood entering the arena today. The spotlight snaps to the left. The announcer points to Li Wan, declaring him the warrior representing the blue team. Then, the focus shifts. Facing him is the opponent in red shorts, a strange, intense young man named Choi. The announcer clears out, and the referee steps in, the tension mounting. He motions for both fighters to approach the center. The time for talk is over. Xiang moves to the very edge of the ring, finding the perfect vantage point. His eyes lock onto the scene, analyzing every micro-movement. The referee barks at Li Wan. Are you ready? Li Wan nods instantly. No hesitation, only resolve. He turns to Choi and demands the same answer. Choi nods, his guard already up. He keeps his fists tight near his face, eyes narrowed, locking in his concentration. The referee slashes his hand down. Fight! Instantly, both warriors heighten their senses, reading the air to anticipate the first strike. Ding! The bell rings, and the calm shatters. Both fighters launch their strategies without a second of delay. A sinister grin splits Choi's face. He rushes forward like a blur, aiming a lightning-fast blow to stun Li Wan instantly. But Li Wan is ready. He reads the trajectory in a split second and weaves. Slipping to the side, he prepares a counterattack, looking to seize the offensive momentum. But Choi's speed is godlike. He unleashes a torrential combo, shutting down Li Wan's counter before it even begins. A barrage of fists rains down. One punch connects cleanly, sending Li Wan stumbling back under the overwhelming pressure. Li Wan frantically scans for an opening. He knows if he doesn't find a gap now, he will be crushed without landing a single hit. He forces himself to calm down. Planting his feet with iron stability, he engages his core, ready to turn the tide. Flash! Choi cannot react in time. A devastating left hook from Li Wan slams squarely into his face. The impact rattles Choi's skull. He feels the sting on his cheek and realizes he cannot afford to slow down, not even for a heartbeat. One slip-up means defeat. Both warriors roar and charge, colliding in the center, their fists meeting in a violent stalemate to halt the other's momentum. Their speed is perfectly matched. They move like mirror images. Crunch! Simultaneous punches land on both faces. The force sends them both skidding back, creating distance. From the sidelines, Xiang watches with growing concern. This isn't right. Li Wan is fighting recklessly, pushing too hard and taking damage he should be dodging. Li Wan pours his soul into the fight, but Choi is a demon. He gives zero respite, unleashing a storm of dozens of punches, desperate to shatter Li Wan's guard and crush him completely. Xiang screams from the crowd, "Don't force it, conserve your stamina, wear him down." But the warning comes too late. Choi smashes through the defense, landing a catastrophic blow directly to Li Wan's face. Xiang freezes, horror washing over him. That hit was critical. It looks like a fight ender. The impact is devastating. Li Wan stumbles backward, his legs turning to jelly as he fights to stay upright. Recovery is impossible. Dazed and defenseless, he is wide open. The follow-up is coming. Seeing the kill, Choi charges. He winds up for the finisher, intending to bury his opponent right here and now. Li Wan's vision clears for a split second, only to see a nightmare. The fist is inches away. Time slows down. He realizes with sinking dread he cannot dodge this. Xiang refuses to give up. He screams a desperate command to dodge, his voice cracking with fear. But fate is cruel. It is already too late. Choi lands a devastating hook directly to Li Huan's jaw. The impact is catastrophic, instantly shattering his ability to fight. The sheer force sends Li Huan crumbling to his knees. His eyes glaze over in confusion before the darkness claims him, and he collapses completely. The referee dives between them immediately. He orders Choi to back off and frantically checks Li Huan's vitals to assess the damage. But there is no movement. Li Huan remains unresponsive to the referee's desperate checks. Consciousness has left him. He blacks out entirely, and the match is officially awarded to his opponent. The referee rises and crosses his arms. It is over. The announcer's voice booms through the arena, declaring Choi the undisputed winner of this brutal match. Seong looks down, a heavy sadness weighing on his heart. The announcer grimly notes that Li Huan simply couldn't withstand that bone-crushing blow to the jaw. The commentary continues, lamenting the fall of a star. Despite his professional record, Li Huan has been utterly dismantled tonight. But suddenly, the atmosphere shifts. A strange, guttural sound echoes from the ring, catching everyone's attention. Something inside Choi snaps. Like a beast scenting blood, he rushes toward the defenseless Li Huan to inflict more pain. His fists fly in a blur of violence. He pounds his defeated opponent's face again and again, ignoring the fact that the match ended long ago. The referee scrambles to pull the frantic lunatic away. He screams, demanding to know what the hell Choi is doing, acting like a rabid dog. But Choi is beyond reason. With a surge of manic strength, he shoves the official aside. He roars at the referee not to interfere and resumes his assault on Li Huan, who lies helpless and unconscious beneath the barrage. It is pure, unfiltered psychopathy. No one knows what drives Choi's madness, but he continues to pulverize an opponent who cannot fight back. The arena freezes in horror. This nightmarish scene drags on for agonizing seconds as the crowd watches in paralyzed confusion. Park screams in terror. His friend yells frantically, wondering where the security staff is and why no one has stopped this massacre yet. A girl in the audience covers her mouth, her voice trembling as she realizes the truth. At this rate, Choi is going to beat him to death. That is the breaking point. Seong moves. He realizes that to save his brother, he will have to get his hands dirty. He rips off his jacket and tosses it aside in one fluid motion. Nothing will hinder him in the fight to come. A staff member spots him sprinting toward the ring, and his eyes widen in shock. He can't believe a reckless young man would dare approach the rampaging Choi. The guard shouts, trying to block his path. But Seong hears nothing but his own heartbeat as he races toward the ring. Power cultivated over years of hidden training ignites in his muscles. He explodes into action. With a deafening clang, Seong grabs the ring fence and vaults over it effortlessly. He lands on the other side, leaving the audience stunned by his agility. Seong steps onto the canvas. He is the only thing standing between his brother and a madman who has lost all control. Despite the height of the jump, Seong sticks the landing with the precision of a master martial artist. He looks up and sees Choi still raining blows on his brother. There is no time to think, only to act. Meanwhile, Choi has abandoned all shame. He screams like a demon for Li Huan to finally die, his fist raised for another strike, but his plan is thwarted. Seong closes the distance in a flash, seizing Choi by the arms and ripping him away from his victim. Realizing that Choi is consumed by bloodlust, Seong decides to provoke him. He needs to become the target to save his brother. Before Choi can even process the interruption, Seong executes a technique with terrifying speed. A powerful toss. In the blink of an eye, Seong hurls the heavy fighter across the ring. As Choi crashes into the corner, Seong glares and calls him a complete bastard. Seeing the threat momentarily grounded, Seong pivots to his brother. He crouches down, asking urgently if he is okay, but Choi rises silently from the corner. His eyes lock onto Seong, burning with vengeance for the humiliation. The spectators scream in panic. They shout for Seong to turn around immediately, warning him of the mortal danger at his back. Choi charges. He closes the distance in a heartbeat, preparing to obliterate the young man who dared to touch him and toss him like a sack of garbage. Unaware of the Reaper approaching, Seong looks at the unconscious Li Huan. He urges him to wake up, dread tightening in his chest. But upon closer inspection, his blood runs cold. Li Huan is staring blankly into the void, his expression empty. Medic! Seong frantically signals the aid team, screaming that an ambulance needs to be called right now. The crowd's warnings reach a fever pitch. They roar at Seong to turn around, screaming that death is right behind him. At that exact moment, Choi launches his attack to end it all. Sensing the killing intent, Seong whirls around just to see a massive fist filling his vision. Instinct takes over. With superhuman reflexes, Seong raises both hands to block the impact at the last second. Asterisk, boom, asterisk. The force is devastating. Even with the block, Seong is sent flying backward, slamming violently into the cage wall. Choi shows no mercy. He rushes in immediately for a follow-up attack, giving Seong zero chance to recover. With arrogance dripping from his voice, Choi screams at Seong, demanding to know who dares interrupt his slaughter. Seong drops into a defensive stance, his guard up like an iron fortress, ready to weather the coming storm. But Choi switches tactics. He grabs Seong's head, launching a devastating knee strike straight for the kill. Seong sees it coming. His reflexes scream as he catches the blow, his iron grip absorbing the lethal force with ease. Park shouts from the sidelines. Choi has crossed the line. Attacking a civilian in the ring is strictly forbidden. Panic erupts. Choi's entire corner rushes the ring, desperate to restrain their rabid fighter before he destroys his career. His coach screams for him to stop, warning that assaulting an innocent man will bring severe consequences. This won't just be a suspension. The coach begs him to back down before the law gets involved and ends everything. But Choi is deaf to reason. Driven by pure bloodlust and ego, he lunges to finish Seong once and for all. Suddenly, Seong shatters the clinch. He slips past the strike, catching the deranged pro fighter completely off guard. Fury ignites in Seong's eyes. He grinds his teeth, branding Choi a true monster, and prepares his retribution. Adrenaline floods his system. Veins bulge against his skin as he clenches his fist with bone-crushing force. He takes a single step back, anchoring his weight to unleash hell. To humble this arrogant beast, Seong whips his arm back. A perfect uppercut launches with terrifying precision. Choi can't even blink. The attack is invisible to the naked eye. Boom! The fist connects squarely with the chin. A brutal message to stay down forever. Lights out. Choi stiffens in midair, consciousness severed the instant the blow connects. Seong unleashes a feral roar, expelling every ounce of his pent-up rage into the silent arena. Park and his assistant stand frozen in shock. A civilian just one-shot at a pro fighter? It's impossible. In the shadows, a mysterious figure from the underground fighting world watches, eyes widening in disbelief. Choi hits the canvas with a heavy thud, motionless. Only Seong remains standing, the undisputed king of the ring. Seong exhales sharply. The red mist fades, and he realizes he let his temper take the wheel again. Worried he went too far, Seong rushes to his fallen opponent's side to check his condition. He asks if he's okay, but there is no response. Suddenly, the terrified team swarms in, targeting Seong. Security guards tackle Seong. They ignore the pro who started it, and treat the victim like the villain. They forcefully drag him away from the scene, treating him like a criminal. As they throw him out, Seong screams at the injustice, but his words fall on deaf ears. But the mysterious observer smiles. He has found a diamond in the rough, a future legend who could dominate the sport. Later that night, Lee Won finally wakes up. The two brothers sit on a bench, nursing sodas and their wounds. Seong breaks the silence, asking about the official ruling of that chaotic match. He needs to know who was declared the winner in such a twisted, unfair fight. Lee Won grins. The match was voided. Choi was disqualified and suspended for his criminal behavior. Seong hesitates, asking if his brother still plans to pursue this dangerous path as a pro fighter. Lee Won chuckles, dismissing the worry. He isn't doing this just for the wins or the glory. He realizes he never said thanks for the save. Seong smirks. If he wants to show gratitude, he can cover his shift. His friend immediately refuses. Absolutely not happening. Seong laughs, calling him selfish, but insists Lee Won needs to rest and heal his body first. But Lee Won's expression turns serious. He didn't just call him here to chat. There's something important. Seong leans in, intrigued. Lee Won warns him to listen closely and not make any hasty decisions. Seong sighs. He hates riddles. Just spit it out already and stop dodging the point. Lee Won laughs at his brother's impatience. Fine. Straight to the point it is. He stares deep into Seong's eyes. How would you like to become a pro boxer? Seong is stunned. Before he can object, Lee Won slides a sleek business card into his hand. Seong inspects it skeptically. It belongs to Jang, the legendary fight promoter and organizer. Lee Won delivers the final hook. Jang saw everything. He saw him crush a pro, and now he wants to make Seong a star. Seong stares at the business card like it holds the secrets of the universe, while Lee Won leans in close. He points out the cold, hard truth. A connection like this is a once-in-a-lifetime lottery ticket that you don't just throw away. But doubt clouds Seong's mind. He questions if he's even worthy, paralyzed by memories of every time his athletic attempts brought nothing but disaster to those around him. Lee Won listens to the spiraling negativity for a moment before deciding he's heard enough. He cuts through the mental noise instantly. Locking eyes with his brother, his expression hardens. He makes it clear, he didn't drag himself here to listen to a pity party. Then, the tension snaps. Lee Won cracks a grin, teasing Seong for being so easily fooled by his tough guy act. Seong fumes, snapping that his trauma isn't a punchline. Lee Won sets down his soda, the playfulness vanishing. It's time for real talk. He confesses the truth about his own journey. The reason he fell in love with the brutal world of boxing wasn't some grand philosophy. It was simple, it was fun, and it paid the bills. He was on the verge of going pro, and if not for the disaster of tonight's fight, he would have been a star. Seong leans in, his voice heavy. He asks the question he's afraid to hear. Does Lee Won plan to quit? Lee Won shakes his head. As he said, the violence is addictive. It feels like destiny coursing through his veins. Even if he never dreamed of holding a championship belt, he fights because it thrills him, because it makes him feel alive. And honestly, that's the only reason he needs. Seong stares down at his own calloused palm. He wonders, does a man really need a grandiose dream just to chase what sets his soul on fire? Before Lee Won can even speak, Seong answers his own question. You don't need a massive ambition to do what you love. You just need to live. He clenches his fist, tight. An unprecedented surge of energy explodes within him. A new goal ignites in the darkness of his life, burning brighter than any star. With a calm resolve, he rises from the bench. He dusts off his coat, shedding his hesitation along with the dirt. Lee Won notices the shift in his aura. He asks if he's leaving, and Seong simply nods, noting the late hour. It's time to head home, but before he turns, fire burns in his eyes. He looks at his brother and makes a vow. I start tomorrow. Lee Won beams, a genuine smile breaking across his face. He tells him to go for it, to give it absolutely everything he's got. As Seong walks away, he glances back one last time. With a warm smile, he tells Lee Won to recover well and take care of himself. Seong disappears into the night. Lee Won downs the last of his soda, his eyes fixed on his brother's retreating figure. A realization hits him. His brother wasn't born to be a simple store clerk. He was made for something far greater. The world shifts around him. Lee Won hallucinates a vision Seong in the center of the ring, bathed in lights, with thousands of people chanting his name in a deafening roar. The image burns into his retinas. It's not just a fantasy. He knows he has just glimpsed an inevitable future. But a second later, the illusion shatters. He is back in the quiet street, watching Seong's lonely figure walk home under the hum of the streetlights. Lee Won turns away, a chuckle escaping his lips. He laughs at his own imagination. It felt too much like a scene from a blockbuster movie. Glancing up at the night sky, he whispers to himself, if Seong truly follows this path, that glory isn't a dream, it's a promise. Meanwhile, somewhere high up, Jong wraps up a business call. He thanks the other party, confirming their meeting is set in stone. His assistant looks puzzled, asking about the schedule. Jong smirks. He just closed a deal with the hottest topic in the major leagues this season. The assistant's eyes widen. The news is everywhere. An ordinary civilian who knocked out a pro cold. The public is going insane over it. And that, Jang explains with a dark glint in his eye, is exactly what makes him valuable. The secretary hesitates. Does Jang intend to turn a nobody into a real fighter? Jang counters immediately. Don't you think he's already there? The aide is skeptical. It had to be dumb luck. He struck an athlete who was already exhausted and battered. Jang's smile doesn't waver. He challenges his assistant. Do you honestly believe luck works that way? He rises from his leather chair, amused. He tells his assistant that he still has a long, long way to go before he understands the fighting world. Jang explains. Choi might be a difficult fighter to handle, but his resilience? It's top tier, comparable to the legends of the sport. It was obvious Choi was struggling during the star fight, but even exhausted, he's a beast. A simple rookie should never have been able to take him down. That punch was no accident. Jang hints that there's more to his decision than just power. He checks his luxury watch. He needs to move. Being late is not an option. Snatching his briefcase, he heads for the door, announcing that he is heading to the meeting. The assistant bows, wishing him a victory in the negotiations to come. As he walks, Jang's mind races. In the professional world, raw skill is only half the battle. There is a quality just as vital. No champion relies solely on their fists. The true masters use psychological warfare, taunting their opponents into submission. They provoke, they irritate, they force errors. One slip in concentration, and it costs you everything. And that is what he sees in this new rookie. For manager Jang, a true champion needs more than just fists. They require lightning-fast reflexes and a killer sense of humor, the charisma to dominate the situation and captivate the fans. Jang's instincts were screaming at him. This kid wasn't just good, he had the spark. He possessed every single quality needed to rise as a legendary champion. After witnessing that display of raw talent, Jang was certain of one thing. Letting Sion slip through his fingers would be the single greatest regret of his life. A short time later, the stage shifted to the quiet atmosphere of Cafe Eden. It was time for the negotiation that would change everything. Sion had arrived right on the dot. He sat there, eyes sharp, quietly analyzing the man sitting across from him, his perspective. Manager. With a gaze full of curiosity, he cut straight to the chase. Did this man truly intend to turn him into a professional fighter? Jang nodded with absolute conviction. But instead of wasting words on why times he chose Sion, he decided to show him. He flipped open a laptop, bringing up footage of a recent street brawl where Sion had intervened. The screen flickered to life, freezing on a chaotic moment. It captured the exact split second that defined Sion's potential. On screen, the thug Choi launched a vicious knee strike, aiming to cripple, but Sion dodged with supernatural fluidity. In the same breath, he countered with a devastating blow. Jang hit pause right as the uppercut connected. Sion shrugged it off, his voice calm. He claimed it was nothing more than dumb luck. But Jang leaned in, a knowing glint in his eye, and asked if he really believed that lie. The manager began to dissect the movement frame by frame. He pointed out how Sion had shifted his entire body weight to his left leg, anchoring himself for the counter. From that anchor point, Sion had locked his right leg, creating the perfect axis. It allowed his hips and torso to torque with explosive force, unleashing a strike meant to end the fight instantly. Jang stood up, playfully mimicking the motion in the middle of the cafe. He grinned, dropping the analysis for a moment of levity. But his message was serious. That wasn't just a simple uppercut anyone could throw. It was a masterpiece of kinetic energy that no amateur should be capable of. The precision was surgical. The speed was blinding. Jang declared that such a move belonged only to the elite fighters born with a gift that couldn't be taught. Snap. Jang closed the laptop and locked eyes with the young man. He asked again, was it really luck? Or was Seong aiming for Choi with intent the entire time? Seong finally dropped the act. He looked up, his expression serious, and admitted the truth. We were aiming at each other. The confession wiped the smile off Jang's face. Stunned, he leaned forward, demanding to know exactly what that meant. Seong explained that Choi had spotted an opening. The thug had seen a split-second chance to take Seong down and had committed everything to that knee strike. Jang's mind raced. So Seong hadn't just reacted. He had read the opening and counterattacked simultaneously. It was a level of combat IQ that was simply unimaginable. A slow, satisfied smile spread across the manager's face. His gut had been right. This boy wasn't just a fighter. He was a rough diamond. A treasure waiting to be polished. Breaking the silence, Jang probed further. He needed to know the origin of that power. Have you ever trained in sports before? Seong decided to lift the veil on his past. He revealed that back in elementary school, he had spent 3 years swinging bats in the baseball club, but high school was different. His focus had shifted from hitting balls to grappling bodies. He had spent 6 grueling years mastering the mat in the wrestling club. The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place. Jang nodded, understanding finally dawning on him. That explained it. The kinetic vision of a batter combined with the balance of a wrestler. It gave Seong a reaction time that was practically inhuman. Jang decided to stop dancing around the issue. He locked eyes with Seong, his voice dropping to a serious whisper. With talent like that, why have you never stepped into the world of MMA? Seong fell silent. The question hung heavy in the air. He looked down, weighing his words carefully, afraid to speak too soon. But in that silence, a resolve hardened within him. He realized he was standing at a crossroads, and it was time to choose a path that would alter his destiny forever. He looked up, fire igniting in his eyes. He admitted it. He wanted to fight. Especially after the thrill of his recent battle, he craved the cage. Jang beamed, ready to celebrate, but Seong cut him off with a sharp gesture. Wait. There's one condition. Seong didn't mince words. He knew the harsh reality of the industry. Rookie fighters didn't make money until they were famous, and fame didn't come cheap. Memories of financial struggle flashed through his mind. Stardom wouldn't just fall from the sky. Becoming a pro required training, diet, coaching, and investment he couldn't afford. The young man's expression softened. The last thing he would ever do is become a burden to his parents. He refused to gamble their stability on his own selfish ambitions, especially for a dream that might crumble into dust. Jang listened intently, absorbing the young man's integrity. He paused, calculating. Then he asked if Seong truly meant he needed a fortune every night just to feel secure. To Seong's absolute shock, Jang didn't flinch. Done, he declared instantly. I'll handle the money. Your financial problems are solved. He didn't stop there. Jang promised that equipment, gym fees, everything would be covered by the agency. He would provide all necessary battle gear. Furthermore, he offered a base salary that matched a full-time social worker's income, ensuring Seong wouldn't have to waste energy on part-time jobs. Seong wasn't naive. He narrowed his eyes, looking for the trap. Generosity always comes with a price, he said coldly. What do you want in return? The manager calmly lifted his teacup, taking a slow, deliberate sip before revealing the catch. Just one thing, Jang said. Pass the sparring test. If you can impress the CEO, the contract is yours. And if I fail? Seong asked quickly. Jang shrugged with effortless cool. Then you just go back to your normal life. No harm, no foul. A smirk tugged at the corner of Seong's lips. He understood now. They weren't just giving away money. They wanted to see if he was a beast worthy of the investment. Jang leaned back, the offer hanging in the air. The final choice lay in Seong's hands. So, Jang asked, do you have any more questions? Or are we ready to make history? Seong locked eyes with the director and asked the question that mattered most. When is the sparring test? Jang didn't hesitate. He set the date for exactly 1 month from now, right here in their gym, adding that all necessary training would happen on these very grounds. The young rookie asked if the date was set in stone. Jang nodded, explaining that he accepted rescheduling requests because, frankly, 30 days might not even be enough time to prepare. He told Seong to simply reach out whenever he felt truly ready to face the challenge. But then, Seong dropped a bombshell that nearly made Director Jang choke on his own breath. He declared he wanted to take the sparring test times today, *. The director blinked, stunned, and quickly asked if the boy had a death wish. Seong simply shrugged, calmly replying that he didn't see the problem. Baffled, Jang questioned his sanity. Was this kid actually serious about rushing into such a critical fight without a single day of prep? However, a fire began to kindle in Seong's expression, a look of indomitable spirit that couldn't be faked. Radiating pure determination, he declared that he had never been more serious in his life. Jang stared in disbelief. He couldn't wrap his head around such reckless confidence, his eyes locking onto the new recruit for a tense silence. Regaining his composure, the director asked the obvious question. Is there a reason you're in such a rush to get beaten up today, instead of next month? Jang warned him that MMA wasn't a playground game, but Seong countered instantly that was exactly why he needed to do this now. He declared that the timeline was irrelevant. Whether the fight happened tomorrow or in 30 days, his skills wouldn't magically skyrocket in such a short window. Jang looked at him, astonished. The kid's logic was dangerously sound. For some strange reason, Seong's reckless words carried a weight of conviction that was hard to ignore. Jang shook his head. It can't happen today anyway, he countered. We need to find you a suitable opponent first. He proposed a compromise. Postpone the test for just 1 week. He asked if that wasn't a better deal than waiting an entire month. Jang presented a calm argument. To pass the test, one must at least know the basics. Seong paused, weighed the logic, and finally nodded in agreement. It's settled then, Jang announced, closing the file. We'll end the meeting here. Your trial by fire happens next week, at 3 o'clock sharp. Staring intensely at the rookie, Jang added one final out. You can still refuse. We can push this back to a time when you're actually ready. But Seong looked him dead in the eye and calmly stated that there was no turning back. The spar had to happen as soon as possible. Jang remained silent, studying the boy. Was this bravery or stupidity? He wondered just what this kid was truly chasing. Finally, a subtle smile touched the director's lips. He murmured softly that in a week's time, the rookie's true level would be painfully obvious to everyone. Seong stood up from the table. Then I'll get going, he said. I have a shift to finish at work. Jang wished him luck, advising him to study hard for the upcoming battle. Seong promised he would give it his all and confirmed he'd see him next week. He turned and walked toward the exit, a proud smile stretching across his face. He hadn't backed down. He was really going to test himself in the arena. Sometime later, Seong found himself standing before the imposing entrance of the gym where Lee Wan and the other elite fighters trained. His eyes scanned the building. This wasn't just a gym. It was a fortress of strength, a true headquarters for warriors. Without a hint of hesitation, Seong stepped inside, climbing the stairs as he took in the impressive scale of the facilities. Moments later, the protagonist reached the main gym entrance and paused. He stood before the glass door, a brief flicker of hesitation holding him back. Gathering his resolve, he pushed the door open and stepped into the lion's den, apologizing for the intrusion as he scanned the room. The sight was intense. Hardened fighters were pushing their bodies to the limit on the equipment, maintaining peak physical condition. On the other side of the hall, he spotted athletes drilling with their coaches, refining their stances and sharpening their combat instincts. Inside the ring, Seong watched a fighter unleashing a barrage of strikes against the pads held by a trainer. He watched with keen interest. It had been a long time since he had witnessed such crisp, powerful punching technique. Suddenly, his thoughts were shattered by Lee Wan's voice. Why are you standing there like a statue? You should have told me you were here. His friend approached with a grin, throwing a few playful, friendly jabs. You never change, do you? Lee Wan laughed. Another man approached Park. He extended a hand, his expression welcoming. I'm Park, glad to finally meet you. Seong returned the grip firmly, introducing himself. Since you're Lee Wan's friend, Park said, do you mind if we drop the formalities? Seong shook his head. He didn't mind at all. Park's expression turned slightly more serious. Director Jang told me the news. You're taking the test in a week. He looked Seong up and down, analyzing him. I'll be completely honest with you, Park said. You should probably just decline the test. Before Seong could respond, Park gestured toward the locker room. Go get changed into your sportswear. It's time to prepare. Lee Wan steps forward, signaling that it is time to drag Seong into the locker room. The protagonist trails behind Lee Wan, his mind already drifting into the violent unknown that awaits him. Now that the path is chosen, he realizes his road to legend is finally beginning. All that remains is to fight with everything he has to earn his spot in the light. But his determination is shattered in an instant by Coach Park, who ruthlessly declares that, in his eyes, this entire training session is nothing but a waste of precious time. Seong freezes, completely blindsided by the hostility, staring in confusion at the trainer whose demeanor has turned ice cold. Yet, the trainer's brutal logic makes sense. He questions what Seong could possibly master in a single week, noting that real skill takes years, not days, to cultivate. Still, refusing to leave the rookie completely defenseless, Park decides they will focus strictly on the essential strikes. Seong nods, ready to begin immediately, but Park drills him with a stare and asks what he believes is the absolute core of wrestling. Without a second of hesitation, Seong confidently claims that the most critical element of combat is the punch itself. Park corrects him, stating he is only half right. The true foundation lies in calculating the devastating damage a fighter can inflict. He strides over to the heavy bag, announcing that their first lesson will be mastering the jab to turn theory into reality. With that, Park throws a medium-strength strike at the bag, causing it to barely sway to the side in a lackluster display. Seong watches the trainer closely as he repeats the motion, his fist hardly making a dent in the heavy bag's position. The underwhelming show leaves Seong baffled, his mind blank as he struggles to process the weak technique he just witnessed. After a few moments, Park lowers his fists, turns to Seong, and asks if those looked like quality strikes. Seong hesitates, but forces a nod of agreement. Park narrows his eyes, pressing the young man again, asking if he is truly certain those punches were impressive. Deciding that honesty is the best policy, Seong admits that the strikes looked pathetic, weak, and even a bit clumsy. Park nods with a satisfied smirk, steps back to the bag, and asks Seong what the next level of power should look like. Before Seong can answer, Park focuses and unloads a lightning-fast blow, the thunderous impact, sending the bag swinging violently through the air. Seong gasps, noting that this strike was leagues above the previous ones, to which Park nods, confirming the rookie's assessment. But then, the trainer drops a bombshell. Seong is going to learn the first, weaker version of the punch. The protagonist stares at Park in utter bewilderment, demanding to know why he needs to learn such a feeble technique. The trainer calmly explains that in the cage of MMA, one must focus on shells and blocks, not just raw power, to survive the fight. From Park's perspective, the management of distance is the key to victory, especially since the secondary punch, a staple of boxing, requires a specific target to land. Park warns that unlike the open space of boxing, an MMA opponent will be suffocatingly close, rendering standard techniques useless. Because of this lethal proximity, the MMA stance must be lower, with the legs planted wider to maintain balance under fire. Park continues, stating that the next weapon in the arsenal will be the straight punch, similar to the classic boxer's style. He adds that this strike is simple yet rapid, designed to be chained efficiently with the standard jab for a deadly combination. Park decides to demonstrate again, hammering the bag while explaining that the perfect form requires a snap of the jab and an instant retraction. He emphasizes that at the exact same moment, Seong must rotate his entire torso and extend the opposite arm to deliver the follow-up blow, intended to stun the enemy completely. Park instructs that once the combination is thrown, Seong must instantly snap his hand back to his chin, shielding his face to fortify his defense. Finishing the lesson, he turns his gaze to Seong and asks if the rookie grasped the mechanics. The protagonist confidently replies that the logic is crystal clear. Park shoots him a cold look, reminding him that this is merely the theory required to pass. Seong blinks in surprise, asking if that is truly all the knowledge he needs to survive. Park replies that mastering these two punches is halfway to victory, but warns that he must drill them until his muscles move on instinct alone. He steps away from the protagonist and issues a final warning. Watch out for the bag's recoil, or the swinging weight will snap his wrists like twigs. Seong nods, absorbing the advice, just as Lee Won approaches Park and whispers to ask if he missed the main event. Park replies in a hushed tone that he has taught Seong everything necessary to survive the upcoming test. Lee Won scoffs, arguing that Park hasn't taught the kid a thing, pointing out that pure theory is useless without the scars of experience. Park scrutinizes Lee Won, skepticism dripping from his voice as he asks if training Seong is a fool's errand given the suffocating time limit. He scoffs, declaring that Seong has merely 7 days to master the impossible, and warns that even a heaven-sent prodigy would fail under these conditions. When Lee Won's gaze hardens and he insists that Seong isn't just some random nobody, Park sighs. The trainer admits that is the sole reason he accepted the contract, adding that if the boy wasn't vital to Lee Won, Park wouldn't have spared him a second glance. Park warns him to stop chasing miracles and focus on his own survival skills. But suddenly, Park's lecture dies in his throat as he catches the look of sheer shock on Lee Won's face. Seong launches into his training with ferocious determination, smashing the heavy bag with technique that is terrifyingly perfect for a mere warm-up. The protagonist decides to throttle his true power, keeping his strikes at medium speed to perfect the mechanics before the real war begins. Then, he shifts gears, letting his agility explode as he weaves around the bag, unleashing a torrent of heavy blows. The heavy equipment swings violently in every direction under the assault. To any onlooker, Seong's movement is a symphony of violence. His grace and speed are unmatched, completely betraying his status as a novice. Park is dumbfounded, turning to Lee Won to demand why he hid the fact that Seong was clearly an experienced fighter. Lee Won can only stare back, admitting he had no idea the kid was this dangerous. Ignoring the shock around him, Seong maintains his brutal rhythm, landing impact after impact on the hanging bag. In a flash, he plants his feet and drives a devastating punch into the target, putting his entire soul into the blow until a thunderous boom echoes through the gym. For Park, the veteran trainer, time seems to freeze as he studies Seong's intense focus, realizing the boy is micro-calibrating every muscle for maximum destruction. Without uttering a word, Park thinks to himself that things just got interesting. He snaps into coach mode, ordering Seong to switch focus immediately to kicking drills. Park dons the pads, and Seong attacks with full force, eager to impress his new master with raw power. However, moments later, Park sidesteps and bellows a command to halt, ready to tear apart the boy's technique. Park mocks him mercilessly, asking if he is performing ballet or trying to swat a fly with his clumsy feet. He makes it crystal clear that he is disgusted by the lack of precision. The trainer explains that Seong is wasting energy with brute force and must instead focus on a single pressure point for lightning-fast destruction. Seong absorbs the wisdom like a sponge, nodding with eyes burning with resolve as he promises to correct his form instantly. Suddenly, the atmosphere shatters with a booming greeting that cuts through the gym. Seong breaks his stance and spins around to find the source of the noise. A middle-aged man saunters into the gym, scratching his head with a casual air as he surveys the facility. The newcomer looks over the duo, hoping for good results, his aura calm but commanding as he walks toward them. Park's demeanor flips instantly. He approaches with a respectful smile, asking about the seminar, to which the man shrugs, dismissing it as boring. The man's eyes instantly lock onto Seong, realizing there is fresh meat in the gym. Park explains that this is the young prospect director Jong-un has explicitly selected. He introduces the newcomer as Master Hwang, the leader of the club, and Seong bows respectfully, honored to meet the legend. Hwang studies Seong and asks if he is enjoying the pain. Seong nods, expressing his admiration for their tournaments and his hunger to fight. Hwang's eyes narrow into slits as he declares that the situation is now crystal clear. Suddenly, the temperature in the room plummets, and a chill crawls down Seong's spine as he feels the weight of every predator in the gym staring at him. However, Master Hwang quickly dissolves the killing intent. He smiles, telling Seong to work hard and seize his destiny. Hwang turns to leave, tossing a command to the entire room to push past their absolute limits, which Park accepts with a bow. Park turns back to the protagonist, declaring that the break is over, and Seong agrees instantly. Seong watches Hwang leave, noting the man's casual yawn despite his terrifying presence. Finally, after a hellish week, the day of the test arrives. Seong stands ready, his focus razor-sharp and his determination unshakable. Gripping his gloves, a thought strikes him. Was he insane to demand a test after only 1 week? He recalls the sleepless nights and the exhaustion, yet the perfect strike Park taught him still feels out of reach. Seong snaps back to reality, realizing how careless he was to rush into the lion's den without thinking. He offers a grim smile, thinking that if he had used his brain, he never would have accepted this suicide mission. He clenches his fists, coming to a grim conclusion. He is not ready yet. To pass the upcoming test, he needs to push his body beyond its current limits. Focused entirely on his internal struggle, he fails to notice the shadow looming behind him. It is Hwang, the man who has been silently observing his growth from the darkness. Hwang breaks the silence, asking what he is doing here at such an ungodly hour. Stepping out of the shadows, he questions the progress of Seong's strikes after a full day of grueling practice. Seong lowers his head, frustration evident in his voice. Despite the endless repetition, he admits he still cannot execute the technique correctly. Hwang's gaze sharpens, analyzing him like a predator. He commands Seong to kick the bag with full power, wanting to dissect the flaw in his form. Seong hesitates, questioning if the older man is serious. Hwang cuts him off cold, stating that a fighter must get used to performing under the pressure of constant observation. Apologizing for his doubt, Seong asks where his technique is failing. Hwang dismisses the question, telling him the theory is useless right now, he just needs to obey and strike. With no room for argument, Seong turns to the heavy bag. He steels his nerves, raises his knee, and unleashes everything he has into a single, desperate blow. As Seong moves, Hwang's eyes lock onto every micro-movement, calculating exactly how much of Coach Park's theory the rookie has actually absorbed. A heavy thud reverberates through the empty gym, the sound of raw impact echoing off the walls. Breathless, Seong turns to the mentor, searching for approval, but Hwang remains stone-faced, letting the silence stretch for agonizing seconds. Finally, Hwang meets his gaze. The verdict is brutal. He states plainly that the strike was poor, sloppy, and utterly unprofessional. He dissects the failure instantly. Seong is striking only with his legs, making the movement sluggish. Hwang explains that true speed and power come from the core. He must use his abdominal muscles to accelerate the impact. The advice catches Seong off guard. He blinks in surprise, asking if such a small adjustment is truly the key. Hwang confirms it with absolute certainty. The hips and the abs must fire in perfect synchronization. Using only half the body's muscle groups will never yield lethal results. Stepping forward, the veteran fighter takes his stance. He declares that he will show the rookie how a real strike is delivered. He orders Seong to watch closely. Hwang coils his body like a spring, explaining that the core must tighten first to force the hips into the correct trajectory. He breaks down the mechanics, describing how the leg must rise at the exact split second the waist begins its rotation. It is all about timing. The torque of the body must align perfectly to deliver a strike with maximum precision. Hwang unleashes the kick. The impact is terrifyingly precise, carrying so much power that the heavy bag is blasted backward as if hit by a truck. Seong watches, mesmerized. The sheer perfection of the movement lights a fire in his eyes. This is exactly the legendary form he has been struggling to replicate for days. Hwang lowers his leg, turning to the stunned rookie. He asks casually what Seong thinks of the demonstration. Still reeling from the display, Seong admits it was flawless exactly as he imagined it should be. Hwang cracks a smile, calling him a strange kid, noting that anyone watching would think Seong was already a pro. With the lesson complete, Hwang turns his back, walking toward the gym's exit. Over his shoulder, he wishes the rookie good luck on the test tomorrow, disappearing into the night. The sun rises on the day of judgment. Seong arrives at the training hall, his heart pounding as he prepares for the test that will decide his entire future. Across the room, his opponent is already warming up. The enemy looks ready to offer fierce resistance, determined to crush Seong's dreams with superior skill. But Seong does not waver. He keeps his focus razor sharp, mentally cycling through every opening strategy, calculating the best path to victory. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifts. A man with a commanding presence enters the hall, clearing his throat loudly to demand attention while his eyes lock onto Seong. It is Director Kim, the head of the fight club. He turns to the man beside him, Coach Jung-eun, and asks if this kid is the prospect everyone is talking about. Jung-eun nods respectfully, confirming that Director Kim has a sharp eye for talent. However, the director smirks, asking if a pretty face matters when fists start flying. Jung-eun watches Seong closely, mentioning that Coach Park claims this kid is a prodigy who learns at frightening speed. Director Kim remains skeptical. He scoffs, stating that words are wind, talent must be proven in blood and sweat inside the ring. In the corner, Lee Won grips Seong's shoulder, offering final words of encouragement. He urges him to stay calm and fight exactly as he did in sparring. Seong nods, his expression serious. He confirms that he has internalized the strategy and is ready to execute. Meanwhile, the opponent's coach whispers toxic advice to his fighter. He dismisses Seong as a mere beginner in MMA, telling his student not to overthink it. He points out that Seong is in the featherweight division and lacks experience. He claims a rookie like that won't even know how to defend properly. With a cruel grin, he orders his trainee to show the rookie his place, finish him off, and eliminate him in the very first round. The moment of truth arrives. Seong and his opponent step into the ring. Coach Park steps in as the referee, ordering both fighters to prepare for war. Park announces the conditions. This is a technical sparring match under strict boxing rules. 3 rounds, 2 minutes each. The opponent smirks, trying to rattle Seong by asking why he's closing his eyes. Park ignores the taunt and recites the laws of the ring. No elbows, no knees, and absolutely no low blows. Seong ignores the trash talk. He retreats into his mind, focusing on maintaining absolute tranquility amidst the rising tension. The rules are set. Park orders them to touch gloves. Steel meets steel as they tap gloves and retreat to their corners, the bell about to ring on a fight that will change everything. A few seconds later, the gong shatters the silence. This is no ordinary match. It is a battle for his entire future. Instantly, the opponent charges. He throws a lightning-fast punch, but Seong weaves past it, his reflexes sharp as a razor. The enemy refuses to let up, launching a storm of fists. Yet Seong dances through the danger, dodging every strike with effortless grace. Desperate to break him, the opponent aims a crushing kick at his defense. But Seong reads his mind. He anticipates the blow and locks down his guard. From the sidelines, Mr. Kim watches with a hawk's eye. He realizes something crucial. This rookie's defense is not just good, it is elite. Seong creates distance, leaping back in a blur. He needs space to calculate, to plan the checkmate. But the enemy mistakes caution for cowardice. Thinking Seong is fleeing in terror, he recklessly charges in for the kill. Impact after impact. Seong absorbs the blows, his guard raised like an iron fortress against the onslaught. However, passivity is a fatal error. The opponent slips to his blind spot, exposing the flank and delivering a devastating blow. The protagonist has zero time to react. The strike slams into his ribs. Agony explodes through his body, shaking him to his very core. Locking eyes with his attacker, Seong realizes the truth. Mere survival isn't enough. He must become the predator to win. Sensing blood, the enemy doubles down. Punch after punch rains down, desperate to shatter Seong's guard and end this consciousness. Mr. Kim turns to Jung-eun, his voice grim. He is taking too much damage without firing back. But Jung-eun doesn't flinch. With a confident smirk, he replies that his fighter hasn't lost yet. Yet, Deep down, worry gnaws at him. On the mat, the opponent sneers, mocking Seong's courage before rushing in again. But chaos brings clarity. Seong regains his composure, sidestepping the attack like a ghost. The attacker's eyes widen in shock. He missed? But Seong isn't just dodging, he is winding up. Punishment is coming. Before the enemy can blink, boom! A devastating uppercut smashes into his chin, sending him stumbling backward. Mr. Kim is stunned into silence. Beside him, Jung-un watches with glee, seeing his champion finally rise. The enemy wipes his jaw, admitting it was a good hit. But he warns that raw power won't defeat a veteran's cunning. He charges again, fury in his eyes. But now, Seong is untouchable, utilizing godlike agility to slip past every punch, waiting for the perfect opening. Snap. Seong buries a heavy fist directly into the opponent's left cheek. But the pro refuses to yield. He counters instantly, slamming a fist into Seong's face and knocking him off balance. The gloves are off. The ring turns into a brutal war zone. Seong grits his teeth and fires back. He lands a flurry of strikes on his enemy's battered face. But the opponent returns the favor. His veteran experience shines as he tags Seong's face again and again. Li Wang nudges Huang. Watch closely, he warns. Even against a pro, this kid refuses to break. Huang stays silent, but his eyes are locked on the fight. He dissects every movement, analyzing Seong's potential. The bell rings. Round 1 ends. Referee Park orders the warriors to their corners to recover. Seong rips off his helmet and drenches himself in water. A wild grin spreads across his face. This is amazing. The pain makes him feel alive. Why hadn't he fought like this before? But the break is short. Park calls them back to the center. The kid has instinct, Mr. Kim mutters. He knows exactly where to strike. Jung-un nods, his faith in Seong absolute. However, Mr. Kim's expression darkens. There is one fatal fact that could destroy Seong's future career. He watches grimly as the fight resumes. Seong throws himself into the fray, battling fiercely. But the expert sees what others miss. Seong is slowing down. The constant damage is taking its toll. His chest heaves, sweat blinding him. He struggles to recover his strength to execute his strategy. Jung-un gasps, noticing the fatigue. Mr. Kim sighs. His lack of experience is showing. His focus is crumbling. The enemy senses weakness. The assault intensifies, and Seong's guard begins to crack under the pressure. Every second feels like an eternity. Keeping his hands up is becoming a heroic struggle. A machine gun flurry of punches. The opponent is determined to smash through Seong's defense once and for all. The arrogance returns. Is this it? The enemy shouts. I expected a real fight, not a disappointment. Seong ignores the insults. He maintains his solid defense, wearing down his opponent, while gritting his teeth against the pain. Clang! The gong sounds, signaling the end of a brutal second round. Park dives between the fighters, screaming for the bell. As the round ends, Seong collapses into his corner, his lungs gasping for air like a drowning man. Li Wan is on him instantly, checking his pupils and demanding he regulate his ragged breathing. We need to call this off, Mr. Kim warns, turning to Jung-un. But the manager just shakes his head, his face grim. I have no cards left to play. The boss observes the chaotic struggle, noting the desperation in the air. Perhaps mercy is the only option left. Unless you can forge him into something better. Suddenly, a presence cuts through the noise. A voice, sharp as a blade, demands attention. Huang approaches the ring, his aura commanding absolute submission from Seong. Seong locks eyes with the old master. What now? But Huang doesn't mince words. This pathetic display? It spits on the very soul of martial arts. Confusion flickers in Seong's eyes. Huang scoffs. Only a fool hands the reins of destiny to his enemy in a death match. Across the ring, the opponent watches, stunned by the interruption. He thinks the rookie is crumbling under the pressure, ready to fold and give up the ghost. MMA is not a game, Huang bellows, his voice shaking the arena. It is a crucible for men. It strips away the lies and reveals your true soul. Huang's voice drops to a lethal whisper. You treat this like a playground? Disrespect the cage, and it will devour you whole. Seong absorbs every word. The message is clear. Cast aside hesitation. Fight with the instincts that have always kept him alive. But heed this, Huang commands. No dirty tricks. Win with honor. Let your resolve burn brighter than your fear. A smirk tugs at Seong's lips. He stands up and rips off his headgear and gloves. The shackles are off. He is going all out. Mr. Kim freezes, captivated by the sudden shift in atmosphere, as Park signals the start of the final round. Seong stalks toward the center. Playtime is over, he declares, his voice cold and low. I am done holding back. The opponent falters, unnerved. The air around Seong has changed. He is stretching out, expanding his presence to fill the ring. A chill runs down the rival's spine. He tries to rationalize it, convincing himself that Seong is just a posturing idiot. But the fear lingers. He realizes that Seong is standing tall, completely unfazed by the previous round's punishment. The tension in Seong's shoulders is gone. It is as if a demon has shed its skin, revealing a completely different fighter underneath. Gritting his teeth, the opponent steels himself. Fine, he thinks. Let us see what you have really got. The bell rings. The opponent launches a sledgehammer blow, but Seong slips past it like smoke. Seong leaps backward, eyes wide, feigning terror. It is a performance designed to bait the trap. The act is too good. Mr. Kim and Jung-un hang their heads, convinced that Seong has lost his nerve completely. Jung-un bites his lip. If only he hadn't been so arrogant, he thinks. We could have salvaged this. But now? The dream is dead. Even the opponent sneers in disgust. He expected a dragon, but all he sees is a frightened rabbit, a pathetic bluff. I am ending this farce, he roars, charging forward to put Seong out of his misery and go home. Wham! A thunderous counterstrike explodes from nowhere. The momentum shifts in a heartbeat. The rival crashes to the canvas. He scrambles to look up, eyes trembling. The easy prey is now the predator. The VIPs whisper furiously. How did the favorite miss? How did the underdog land that shot? Adrenaline screams in the opponent's veins. He scrambles to his feet, desperate to regain control. He throws a flurry of jabs at Seong's head, but Seong weaves through them with supernatural grace. Seong's mind is razor-sharp. One mistake, one slip, and it is lights out. He must exist on the very edge of perfection. Reading the attack trajectory, Seong flows like water, slipping into the opponent's blind spot. An opening! Seong drives a devastating fist into the liver. The opponent buckles, gasping for air. Seong doesn't get greedy. He snaps back instantly, creating space and resetting for the kill. Confusion wars with pain in the rival's eyes. Why can't he touch him? And why does Seong hit like a freight train now? Seong decides to break his spirit. He flashes a cocky grin and curls his finger. Come on. The taunt hits the mark. Logic vanishes, replaced by blinding red rage. The opponent's mind snaps. He wants nothing but to crush this insolent rookie into the dirt. He charges like a wild bull, but Seong stands still, calm amidst the storm, having predicted this exact outcome. Effortless. Seong parries the sledgehammer blow with a mere flick of his wrist and glides to the flank. The enemy unleashes a torrent of strikes, but he is punching smoke. Not a single blow connects with the target. As Seong continues to throw wild, unpredictable punches, confusion strikes his opponent. This situation feels completely unrecognizable. Gone is the terrified novice from the start of the fight. In his place stands a warrior who seems to have shed all fear. Watching Seong's fluid movements, the opponent's mind races. What happened to the trembling coward? And when exactly did he learn to control his body with such impeccable precision? Seizing the perfect window of opportunity, Seong coils his muscles. He swings with devastating force, aiming a crushing right hook straight for his opponent's face. Horror flashes in the opponent's eyes. Desperate to survive, he raises his hands, shielding his head to minimize the catastrophic damage. But it is a trap. The hook is merely a phantom, a calculated feint. With the opponent's guard high, Seong unleashes the true attack, a thunderous kick slamming into the unsuspecting defenseless body. A wave of nausea hits the opponent as he realizes the truth. He fell for a simple bluff, a rookie mistake against a fighter who suddenly moves like a seasoned veteran. Seong does not hesitate. Capitalizing on the momentum, he charges back into the fray like a wild beast, hand raised high to strike again. Terrified and battered, the opponent scrambles to protect himself once more. But he is too slow. Realization dawns too late as he sees through Seong's brutal plan. Immediately exploiting the weakness, Seong drives another punishing kick into the torso. The impact is sickening, stripping the enemy of his remaining strength and breath. The spectators watch in stunned silence. They wonder how Seong's opponent suddenly began faltering, whispering that he might be throwing the match on purpose. But Mr. Kim, a legend who has witnessed over 1,000 fights, sees the truth. He understands perfectly that Seong's opponent is not throwing anything. He is fighting for his life. Mr. Kim's sharp eyes dissect Seong's every motion. He notices the boy moving along a bizarre, fascinating trajectory, employing tactics that defy convention. He notes that Seong is weaving a complex combination of moves. It is a rhythm that differs significantly from the clumsy style he displayed just moments ago. Reflecting on the first two rounds, Mr. Kim realizes the pattern. Seong throws questionable, unexpected punches, then retreats with movements that look careless, but are actually elastic and precise. The realization hits him. Seong is combining a lightness of movement that perfectly balances raw roughness with liquid agility to attack from angles no one expects. For a fleeting moment, Mr. Kim cannot believe his eyes. Is this a true innate style? How could a rookie possess such unyielding determination and battle sense? But as the reality settles in, a sincere smile cracks Mr. Kim's stoic face. He declares that he feels alive again. as if he has been awakened from a long, deep slumber. Inside the ring, the opponent is gasping for air, exhausted and broken. He is forced to admit that Seong has completely dominated him. Although his pride screams against it, the damage is undeniable. Every punch lands with bone-shaking weight. Yet, the young man refuses to yield. He charges forward with a desperate roar, swearing he will never succumb to Seong's rhythm or surrender the initiative. In the blink of an eye, Seong lunges forward. A flash of motion, and he lands a devastating uppercut, striking his opponent squarely on the chin with the force of a hammer. The remainder of the round turns into a rookie massacre. Seong unleashes a torrent of power, his fists smashing through the crumbling defense again and again. The opponent has no chance. He continues, absorbing blow after blow, each strike throwing him further off balance and shattering his focus. With the final strike delivered, Seong stands back, observing coldly. He knows the damage is critical. That body will not rise again to fight for quite some time. Consciousness fades like a dying light. The opponent collapses, his body plummeting toward the canvas like a stone. An instant later, a heavy thud echoes through the hall as the unconscious body crashes down. Seong knows it is over. His opponent is completely defeated. A heavy silence descends upon the entire arena. Seong turns to the side, adrenaline fading, trying to figure out the protocol for his victory. The first to break the trance is Won. He approaches Park, asking if he would like to officially call the match since the opponent is out cold. Park snaps back to reality and rushes in. He waves his hands, declaring the fight over. Seong is free to leave the ring as the victor. Lee Wong and the supporters erupt into joyful cheers. Meanwhile, Hwang, who had been watching from the shadows, smiles with discreet satisfaction. Seong locks eyes with Hwang. In that gaze, he realizes the mentor is pleased with his striking technique and execution. A quick smile touches Seong's lips. He knows the truth. If it were not for Hwang's crucial advice, this competition would have ended in his defeat. Mr. Kim approaches the ring, his presence commanding. Excellent fight, he states, adding that the outcome was extremely unexpected. Seong responds with a humble bow of gratitude. After that, Mr. Kim's expression tightens. He adds that he noticed a bad habit in Seong's style that must be fixed immediately. He looks at the boy, letting the silence hang heavy. So, Mr. Kim continues, his voice lowering. He explains that in the final round, Seong paid more attention to the violence than the duel itself. Mr. Kim reminds him that they are athletes, not street thugs. In sports, rules and honor must be upheld. He adds that a person who cannot see the difference does not deserve the title of athlete. He notes that a fighter can be rude and even cruel in their methods, but they must never cross the line. Crossing it automatically makes them unworthy. Seong furrows his brows slightly, studying Mr. Kim carefully. The weight of the veteran's words sinks deep into his mind as he ponders their true meaning. The owner's gaze bored into him, demanding to know if the message had sunk in. Sion didn't flinch, replying that he understood exactly what sportsmanship meant in this world. But then, a dangerous glint flashed in his eyes. He added a condition of his own. He would do anything, absolutely anything, to claim victory. As long as it didn't break the rules of the ring. Mr. Kim narrowed his eyes, searching for a lie, asking if he truly meant those bold words. Sion shot back instantly. Why would he doubt himself? The law was the only limit. Everything else was fair game in a fight for survival. The tension hung thick in the air. The owner waved a hand, dismissing the philosophy lesson for later. Right now, there was only one thing that mattered: signing the contract. The answer came faster than a jab. Sion's voice cut through the room like a blade. He would not sign. Mr. Kim blinked, the words not registering at first. But as the refusal settled in, his face went rigid. He froze mid-sentence, the realization striking him like a physical blow. Jung-un gasped, eyes wide with shock. Sion stood tall, his voice steady as steel. He declared that he simply wasn't cut out to be a puppet for an elite fight club. He didn't belong in their polished world. He wasn't the kind of athlete they could control. With a sharp, respectful bow, he apologized to the stunned room. If anyone had pinned their hopes on him, they were about to be disappointed. He was walking away. Hwang sat frozen, rendered speechless by the boy's audacious sincerity. He scrutinized Sion's retreating figure, trying to figure out if this was some twisted joke or a moment of insane bravery. Time skipped forward. The scene shifted to the warm glow of a small, hidden cafe, Hwang's sanctuary for rare nights of peace and strategy. Peace, however, was in short supply. Hwang gripped his phone, asking Jung-yoon about the fallout. He needed to know just how furious the director was. The voice on the other end was a storm of rage and indignation. Hwang held the phone away from his ear, listening to the rant for minutes, occasionally murmuring a tired acknowledgement. Finally, the storm passed. Hwang ended the call, cutting off the noise with a decisive click. A heavy sigh of relief escaped his lips. He turned his attention to the table, where Sion, the source of all this chaos, sat waiting for him. Seong bowed his head, apologizing for the trouble he had caused. But instead of anger, a knowing smile played on Huang's lips. He finally understood what was driving this kid. Huang pulled out a chair and sat down, his expression serious. He was ready to listen. He needed to understand the logic behind such a reckless, career-ending move. Seong hesitated, searching for the right words. Huang didn't let him off the hook, pressing him again. Why had he wanted to join their team in the first place? A grin spread across Seong's face. No grand strategy, no complex plan. He shrugged. He just wanted to. That was all. Huang scoffed, shaking his head. The kid was acting like a complete fool, a loudmouth with no brain to back it up. Sighing deeply, Huang leaned in, his gaze piercing. He demanded the truth. Was this about revenge? Was he trying to stick it to Mr. Kim for his cold arrogance? Seong's expression hardened. He shook his head firmly. He knew the difference between right and wrong, and petty revenge wasn't his style. He stretched his fingers, a nervous habit, before dropping the truth. Throughout his entire school life, every coach he ever had sounded exactly like a recruiter, robotic and controlling. The memories flooded back. He saw his baseball coach screaming in his face, ordering him to stop thinking, stop moving, and just obey like a machine. Even when he switched to wrestling, the nightmare was the same. The coach's voice echoed in his mind, warning him against taking the initiative. Do not think. Just follow orders. They told him that if he dared to listen to his instincts, he would ruin the victory and cause nothing but trouble. A dark memory surfaced the day he disobeyed at the baseball club. The result wasn't just a scolding. The entire team was forced to kneel in the dirt, punished for his freedom. Huang nodded slowly, connecting the dots. Seong didn't just see a boss in Mr. Kim. He saw the ghosts of every tyrant coach who had ever tried to break him. Seong confirmed it with a bitter laugh. They were all the same. Different faces, same empty words, same demand for total submission. Do only what you're told. That was their mantra. Seong clenched his fist. That approach didn't make athletes. It killed their souls and erased their individuality. He looked Huang in the eye, his voice softening with sincerity. He wasn't like them. He operated on a completely different frequency. Seong recalled the moment that changed everything. Huang had told him to fight with all his heart, to use every weapon in his arsenal, as long as he respected the sacred rules of the ring. Huang chuckled awkwardly, scratching the back of his neck. He admitted he'd said that without thinking, mostly because Seong had been dominating the fight anyway. That might be true, Seong replied intensely, but a normal coach would never say such nonsense to an athlete. That's what made it special. Huang feigned shock, clutching his chest. Was the kid trying to insult him? Why would he say such rude things straight to his face and break his fragile heart? Seong quickly waved his hands, reassuring him. It wasn't an insult, it was salvation. Those words had ignited a fire in him that no one else ever had. Huang raised an eyebrow, genuinely surprised by the weight the boy placed on a throwaway comment. That was the reason. Seong declared that he wanted to learn from Huang, and only Huang. The raw determination on his face left the older man stunned. After a thoughtful silence, Huang pointed to the grill. He warned Seong to watch the meat before it burned, slipping on a helper glove to flip the sizzling cut. As the smoke rose, Huang's expression turned grave. He looked deep into the protagonist's eyes. He understood the passion, but there was a cruel reality they needed to discuss. In Huang's experience, countless fighters entered the world of MMA, fueled by pure love for the sport. Just like Seong, he paused, letting the words hang in the air. Then came the hammer drop. Those same passionate dreamers? They all quit within a few years. Vanished. Huang asked if Seong knew the bitter reason behind such a twisted fate. He didn't wait for a guess. He delivered the cold, hard truth. They quit because they starved. Passion couldn't pay for the brutal training or put food on the table. He leaned forward, the firelight dancing in his eyes. MMA wasn't a fairy tale. It was a rich man's game. A sport reserved for those who could afford to bleed. In Huang's cynical view, the world is simple. Everyone joins the association with dollar signs in their eyes, desperate to secure a life of luxury and comfort. Huang launches into his usual explanation, but Seong cuts him off mid-sentence. He raises a hand, signaling that the lecture is unnecessary. He knows exactly where this is going. Tearing into a piece of meat with primal hunger, Seong declares his truth. He is here for the love of MMA. To him, money is nothing but dust. Huang leans back, unimpressed. He tells the rookie that absolutely every fresh face walks through those doors peddling the exact same idealistic nonsense. Seong's gaze hardens, burning with determination as he asks for a chance to start. Huang counters coldly, 99 out of 100 who talk like you. They all eventually quit. The grim statistic doesn't even make Seong blink. He stares directly at the coach. Then it appears I am part of that 1%. Huang smirks, shaking his head. The odds of that are thinner than a razor's edge. Seong falls silent. He doesn't offer a quick retort. Instead, he sits in the heavy quiet, gathering his resolve to deliver an answer that matters. He looks Huang dead in the eye. He vows to prove he is the anomaly, the one survivor out of 100 who will walk this path to the bitter end. He adds that this is his final stand. It is his last opportunity to carve out a legacy. The raw desperation in his voice actually catches Huang off guard. Seong drives the point home. He has chosen his fate. He would rather starve chasing glory than return to a hollow life ruled by the pursuit of cash. At first, Huang says nothing. He stares at Seong intently, his eyes searching for any sign of a bluff, trying to crack the young fighter's mask. Finally convinced that Seong is at least honest with himself, Huang grabs a glass of strong liquor. He downs it in a single, burning gulp. He slams the empty glass onto the table with a sharp times thud asterisk. It is a gavel strike. He accepts Seong's fire and his madness. Huang matches his intensity, locking eyes with the rookie. He asks one final time if Seong is truly sure he won't regret this path of pain. Seong doesn't hesitate. He made this choice alone, and he will carry the consequences without a single regret. But words are cheap to a veteran like Huang. He warns that principles tend to crumble when the belly is empty and the money runs dry. Seong shrugs it off, saying he will cross that bridge when it collapses. Until then, he will work tirelessly. Huang scoffs. So, you prefer to work like a worm? Seong doesn't take the bait. He agrees instantly. If that's what it takes, you are absolutely right. They stare at each other for a heartbeat, the tension thick, before both men burst into loud, raucous laughter at the absurdity of it all. The leader wipes a tear from his eye. It's settled. He doesn't know what else to add. The kid has made his choice. Seong leans in. So, does this mean I'm on the team? Huang takes another bite of meat, chewing slowly. Why does it matter if I agree? It seems you've already decided nothing will stop you. After a few lingering moments, Huang finally relents. We must strike while the iron is hot. He expects to see Seong at the gym next week. Seong responds with pure, unmasked gratitude. He vows, on his honor, not to disappoint the man who gave him a shot. Watching Seong, Huang reflects internally. The more he speaks with this kid, the more intriguing the puzzle becomes. He concludes that adding Seong to the roster won't bring catastrophe. If anything, athletes need that kind of pure, unadulterated obsession. Huang knows that money is the fuel for passion and aspiration. It's a necessary evil. Yet, he understands that the winds are shifting. The era where money ruled supreme is slowly giving way to a generation fueled by genuine love for the sport. Despite the commercial explosion of MMA, Huang can still sense sincerity in the fighters. He can't blame the others, but the real ones. They shine different. Snapping out of his thoughts, Huang looks at Seong again. The future is a fog, but one thing is undeniable: this kid is interesting. The head of the academy makes a silent executive decision. He won't lose Seong to a rival gym. That kind of passion is a rare diamond in a pile of rocks. Turning back to the new recruit, Huang shifts to business mode. He mentions that he has already briefed Jung on the situation. Seong just needs to fill out the special introductory paperwork to make it official. Seong nods. Paperwork is no obstacle. Huang adds a sweetener. He will adjust Seong's entry fee before his official professional debut. That catches Seong's attention instantly. He blinks, admitting he never expected a handout from the cynical coach. With a sudden shift to a confident expression, Seong pushes his luck. He asks for a small discount. He stares for a second, then bursts into loud, sincere laughter. But the laughter hides desperation. Seong insists, his voice dropping. Is the discount possible? He admits his financial situation is currently catastrophic. Huang waves him off. Talk to Jung. He knows exactly how to handle charity cases. Seong presses on, asking about deferred payments. He explains a complex plan to request a tax deduction using his father's card. Huang reassures him, waving a hand. All of that can be arranged. Just focus on fighting. But Seong isn't done. He badgers the coach about his debts, asking if he can extend the repayment period to 6 months instead of 3. Huang nods, his patience thinning. Yes, that can be arranged too. While Huang tries to enjoy his drink, Seong bombards him with questions. Are there restrictions? Can I list fitness as my job title? Seong's curiosity spirals. Now he wants to know if he has creative control over his training uniform. That is the final straw. Huang, who only came here to settle a few simple matters, feels a headache coming on. The kid doesn't know when to shut up. He needed answers, but he needed absolute certainty even more before making his move. Master Wang had no patience for hesitation. With a flick of his wrist too fast to track, he tore right through Seong's shirt at the chest, a silent warning to stop the endless questions. Seong froze, eyes wide. This unassuming middle-aged man possessed a grip that could shred fabric like paper. The message was received loud and clear. Seong shut his mouth, realizing he was out of his depth. Sometime later, Seong returned to the academy. Most of the fighters had written him off, convinced he would never step foot in the gym again. They were wrong. He walked straight to the front door, pushed it open, and stepped into his future. His voice boomed through the hall as he greeted the coach and the athletes with renewed confidence. Heads turned. The gym went silent as they processed the sight of Seong standing there. It took a moment, but recognition finally dawned on them. A warm welcome followed. Lee Wan flashed a knowing grin and said, "Good to see you, but move it. We have a mountain of work to do." Seong pumped his fist into the air, his spirit blazing. "Please take care of me." Coach Park chuckled from the sidelines. "That kid sure is noisy, isn't he?" Seong followed Coach Park into the staff office. Park moved to the kettle and asked casually, "Americano or instant?" "Americano, please," Seong replied, his taste buds ready. "We only have instant," Park shot back without missing a beat. Seong blinked, completely dumbfounded. Why offer a choice that did not exist? Coffee in hand, the mood shifted. Park picked up Seong's file, scanning the raw data of his physical existence. Then, things got weird. Park sat way too close, his hands probing Seong's muscles, testing the density of his frame. "Coach?" Seong asked, thoroughly confused by the invasive exam. "Just doing my job," Park muttered, fingers still pressing. "I get the method," Seong said slowly. "But there is just one tiny detail I need to clarify." Park looked down. His hand had been resting on Seong's pectoral muscle for far too long. It was completely unnecessary for the assessment. The air turned thick with awkwardness. Park snatched his hand back and coughed loudly to break the tension. He shot to his feet to hide the embarrassment. "How long has it been since you trained?" "Just under 2 years," Seong replied. "Current weight?" Park demanded, getting back to business. "I gained 7 kilos last year, but I have stayed flat since then." Park nodded. The kid had discipline with his diet. Seong's eyes narrowed as the pieces clicked. "You are figuring out my weight class, aren't you?" A sharp grin cut across Park's face. "Sharp kid. Nothing gets past you." Park reviewed the stats one last time. Muscle mass, hydration, condition. It was all there. "You are in peak physical form," he admitted. "Your baseline is solid, so no massive overhauls are needed yet." Seong leaned in, eager. "So, where do I fit?" Park hesitated for a second. "I need to finalize it, but you are looking at the lightweight category." Seong recoiled in shock. "Lightweight? I am 80 kilos. That is a 10-kilo cut." "Exactly," Park said, his voice flat and non-negotiable. Panic began to set in. 10 kilos? That is excessive. It will drain me. My strength will vanish, and my stamina will tank. "Relax," Park commanded. "That weight is only for the scale. Day to day, you stay big. Your strength stays. Your stamina stays. We hack the system to make you fit." Seong frowned, trying to recall the regulations. "But the weigh-in is the day before the match according to MMA rules, right?" "Wait." The realization hit him like a truck. "You want me to cut 10 kilos in 24 hours? That is humanly impossible." "Trust me," Park said, his eyes turning serious. "I will be watching every breath you take. Trust the process. You will understand the method when the time comes. For now, just obey. Now, back to work." Park tapped the desk. "You are an anomaly, Seong. Usually recruits get tested at headquarters before they even step in here." He fixed Seong with an intense stare. "Your entry into this club was unorthodox. Walking in here with zero foundation? That simply does not happen." Seong shifted uncomfortably. "I know I have a lot to learn." "Fast track," Park corrected. "Jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, wrestling. You have to master it all while building a pro fighter's body." Park tossed a piece of paper onto the desk, sealing Seong's fate. "Your new life," Park declared, handing over the detailed training plan. Seong scanned the grid. Mondays and Thursdays were pure strength torture. Fridays and Saturdays were reserved for the mat work of jiu-jitsu. "This is not a negotiation," Park said, leaning back. "The plan is set. If you have questions, ask them now, or forever hold your peace." To prevent any confusion, Coach Park pressed the issue one last time. He narrowed his eyes, asking if the rookie's silence meant he was overwhelmed, or if he had so many questions he didn't know where to begin. But Seong didn't flinch. He retorted that he had no questions for one simple reason: he's been preparing for this hell for years. That answer sparked a light in Park's eyes. Satisfied, he announced that the real test would begin the second this exam ended. Rising from his seat, his presence filled the room. He issued a grim warning. This training would break a normal man. Seong didn't back down an inch. He declared this wasn't his first rodeo, challenging them to bring their absolute worst. That burning enthusiasm struck a chord. Park couldn't help but smile, noting that this newcomer possessed a frightening amount of self-assurance. "Ready to start right now?" Park challenged. Seong's eyes blazed with determination. There was no need to wait, he just had to crush every task thrown his way. With steel in his spine, he marched out of the staff room, ready to prove his worth in the arena. But reality was brutal. Time passed, and Seong lay sprawled on the cold floor, his energy completely drained by the coach's sadistic regimen. Park stood over him, his expression grave. He warned that lying on the freezing ground would only make his gasping lungs fail faster, but Seong managed a dry chuckle. He joked that death felt like a sweeter option than standing up right now. Summoning every ounce of willpower, he dragged his broken body up, collapsing against a gym pillar for support. Park smirked. Where did all that arrogance go? Seong, drenched in sweat, could only let out a weak laugh as Park taunted his lack of stamina. The coach then dropped a bombshell. Today was merely the appetizer. The true hell of competition training hadn't even started yet. Yet, anyone looking at the spec sheet would understand his collapse. The workload was inhuman. Sit-ups with a 90-kilogram barbell, curling 28 kilograms in each hand, squatting a bone-crushing 140 kilograms. Worse, the weights got heavier with every set. Even a professional middleweight fighter would have crumbled under such insane pressure. Park realized the truth as he reviewed the data. Heavy weights were the ultimate truth teller. He had set the bar impossibly high, yet he couldn't believe this rookie had actually survived the gauntlet. Suddenly, a maniacal laughter echoed through the gym. Seong was cackling as his muscles burned, leaving Park to wonder if the kid was truly unhinged. The coach frowned, asking if the exhaustion had finally snapped his mind. Why was he laughing in the face of agony? Seong gasped for air, a wild grin on his face. I just love this feeling. Park was baffled. Seong explained that the searing pain in his muscles, the total exhaustion, it was the sweetest sensation in the world. Park chuckled softly. Maybe you should have listened when I said you weren't ready, he teased, suggesting he could have spared himself this torture. Seong's eyes turned serious. He declared that he was no longer just some drifting stranger. He was here with a purpose that couldn't be shaken. Those words hit Park like a truck. Flashbacks flooded his mind of the first time he laid eyes on this boy. He realized Seong had heard every word of his cold skepticism when he claimed a week of training wouldn't change a thing. Seeing the boy catching his breath, Park felt the weight of that memory. The indifference he had shown was now coming back to haunt him. Park cleared his throat, an unfamiliar guilt settling in. Perhaps he had been too ruthless with the kid from the start. He decided he owed him an apology. But first, business. Get up, Park ordered. It's time to stretch. Seong blinked in shock. Stretch? We did that hours ago, he protested, his body screaming in defiance. Park's eyes twinkled with mischief. He retorted that this wasn't normal stretching, this was conditioning. Are you kidding me? Seong asked, suspicious. The coach simply gave a mysterious smile. Trust me, it's all part of the plan. Suddenly, a mocking whisper sliced through the air. Rumor has it, someone failed the endurance test. Startled out of his skin, Seong leaped back, his exhausted legs giving out as he crashed to the floor. The shadow stepped into the light. It was Edward, the legendary strength and conditioning coach. Seong scrambled to regain his composure. He bowed respectfully, stammering, Coach Edward, what are you doing here? Edward struck a flamboyant pose, flexing. I'm here for round 2, he announced. Didn't anyone tell you? The party is just getting started. He stalked closer, his presence looming over the exhausted rookie like a mountain. No time to nap, Edward boomed. The next phase of your torture begins right now. Panic set in. Seong tried to argue, claiming it would be disrespectful to switch masters midstream. He swore he wanted to finish with Coach Park. Unfazed, Edward turned to his colleague. Well, Park? How do we handle this rebellious puppy? Park looked down at Seong. The boy's eyes were wide, silently screaming a desperate plea. Asterisk. Please, save me from him. Asterisk. For a second, a gentle smile graced Park's lips. Seong felt a glimmer of hope. But in this gym, hope was a dangerous thing. Maybe he thinks he has escaped the torture of extra training, but his relief is tragically short-lived. Park, wearing a sadistic smirk, informs Edward that his time with Seong is finished. The boy is now free to be broken by a new coach. Panic sets in. Desperate, Seong pleads for him to reconsider, stammering that they haven't even started the warm-up stretches yet. But Park turns a cold shoulder. He simply leaves the gym, his mind drifting to the gravity of everything that has transpired. A bitter lesson weighs on him. He realizes he still has much to learn, specifically to stop trusting athletes so easily. Yet, glancing back through the observation window, he pauses. Watching Seong battle through the agony of training, Park admits the truth: he has rarely witnessed such raw, unyielding determination. A warrior with that kind of grit and perseverance will always carve their own path to greatness. Lost in thought, Park strides down the corridor. The realization crystallizes in his mind like a diamond. Seong isn't just improving, he is ascending to a completely different level. Back in the pit, Edward, a tyrant of a coach, glares at Seong. He questions the boy's audacity to show weakness and give up now. As Edward's reprimands echo, accusing Seong of laziness after just one round, Park considers the unseen burdens of the young man's past. Later, Seong steps back into the ring for another round of hell. The session begins. This time, A staff member steps up to sharpen the fighter's killing instinct. The goal is speed, precision, and godlike agility. The trainer dons a special focus mitt and lashes out with a lethal strike. He barks at Seong to dodge or get hit. Seong moves like smoke. He weaves through the barrage with terrifying agility, mastering the rhythm of the fight instantly. Now, the command is to attack. The trainer orders a rapid-fire assault against the special gloves. He wants to burn the movement pattern into Seong's muscle memory. From the sidelines, Lee Won and another fighter watch with analytical eyes. The trainer's voice cuts through the noise. Do not hesitate. In a real match, no opponent will ever hand him a clean shot. Seong clicks his tongue, dissatisfied. His strikes feel weak to him, and he naively asks if he can train alone at home. Outside the ropes, Travis, the jiu-jitsu specialist, turns to Lee Won. Does this rookie training actually make a difference? Lee Won scoffs bluntly. If it were that effective, I would have debuted as a legend years ago. Mercifully, the trainer praises Seong's performance. He suggests they take a breather. The protagonist doesn't hesitate, practically collapsing in gratitude. As Seong peels off his gloves, Lee Won calls out to him. The two friends face off. Lee Won notes they started on this path together and suggests a serious chat. Seong nods. He was thinking the exact same thing. Lee Won admits he's shocked Seong actually joined the team, but Seong shoots back a grin he wouldn't be here without Lee Won. That sounds incredibly cheesy, Lee Won groans. Seong laughs, teasing that he'll understand when he grows up. That snaps the young athlete's patience, and he jokingly threatens to beat some sense into him. Their banter is cut short by a roar of applause. The boss has finally returned. Hwang is back in the building. As they head back, the atmosphere shifts. Other athletes lower their heads, exchanging respectful glances for the man who built this empire. Hwang raises a hand, demanding silence. He has a major announcement and orders everyone to gather around. Instantly, the fighters swarm the center of the mat. They sit in disciplined rows as the coaching staff gathers behind them. Hwang flourishes a stack of documents. Does anyone know what I'm holding? A sharp-eyed fighter speaks up. Those are special invitations from the association. Hwang nods grimly. He secured 4 of them. The team erupts, praising him as a true gangster, but Hwang snaps. He orders them to drop the nickname. He bled sweat and tears to get these slots. Seong, still a greenhorn in the pro world, whispers to Lee Won, "What exactly are those invitations?" Lee Won's eyes gleam. He explains the magnitude of the situation. These are golden tickets to the championship. The team has been invited to 4 distinct major competitions. Seong naively asks if anyone can sign up. Lee Won crushes that dream immediately. This is exclusive. It's only happening because the organizers know Hwang's team delivers a blood-soaked spectacle. Seong asks if other teams got invites. Lee Won shakes his head. It's not just about asking. It took massive political effort. The team should be on their knees in gratitude for receiving so many slots. Hwang commands focus. Stop talking and listen. He begins the roll call of the chosen ones. Travis, the jiu-jitsu master, raises his hand. With chilling calm, he declares he is happy to join the war. Next is Tobias, the striking specialist who was dismantling Seong just moments ago. Sitting among these titans, Seong feels the weight of the moment. Both men are Golden Glove recipients, legends in their own right. Finally, Hwang's gaze lands on the sole female warrior. Yoo Jun-min looks up, her eyes burning with intensity. I am ready to compete. Seong watches her from the shadows, a bitter realization settling in. He knows nothing about her, other than the fact they share the same birth year. However, the stats speak for themselves. Min Yoo-jin dominated the X1 tournament, crushing every opponent to claim victory in all 5 matches. She stood as the undisputed champion of the minimum weight division, hailed by fans as the MMA goddess. Seeing her glory, Seong realizes the chasm between his amateur skills and her professional perfection. Suddenly, Manager Hwang's voice cuts through the room. He announces there is one final slot open for the competition. Seong sighs, his shoulders slumping. He is convinced the contract is a pipe dream, already losing himself in disappointment. But then, Hwang calls out his name. The room freezes. Seong snaps his head up, doubting his own ears, while whispers erupt around him. How could a rookie land an invite to the main stage? Min Yoo-jin watches him like a hawk. She remains silent, but her eyes say everything. Her gaze is stern, icy, and penetrating. It is painfully clear she is displeased with this reckless decision. Manager Hwang stands firm, declaring the team followed strict selection criteria. No hard feelings, he warns. He dares anyone to object, but under his crushing authority, silence reigns. Hwang wraps up the critical briefing, dismissing the veterans. He signals for the chosen few to step forward. Seong remains rooted to the spot, paralyzed by shock. Hwang approaches, placing a heavy hand on his shoulder to break the trance. Seong turns to the manager, his voice trembling slightly. He demands to know the meaning behind that unexpected call-out. Face-to-face is best, Hwang replies enigmatically. They retreat to the private lounge, where Seong frantically explains that the senior fighters will be furious at the favoritism. Hwang scoffs, dismissing the concern. What difference does it make now? The organizers have already cast their vote. Seong admits the anxiety is eating him alive, but Hwang waves it off. Stop worrying, the manager insists. Everyone knows the organization's word is absolute law. Hwang adds that Seong has every right to celebrate this miracle. Seong responds that he feels a chaotic mix of thrill and utter confusion. He finally asks the burning question, where did the offer come from? Hwang drops the name, the X1 organization. Seong is thunderstruck. X1 is the apex predator of Korean leagues. He asks how they even found a nobody like him. Hwang smirks. Your fight video went viral. You are famous now, Hwang explains. The bandit of the Central League. The monster who annihilated a pro fighter with a single punch. The reality hits Seong like a freight train. He asks Hwang if this truly means he is making his professional debut. It is possible, Hwang replies, his tone shifting. But there is a major problem. A problem? Seong asks. Hwang tosses a dossier onto the table. See for yourself. Seong scans the opponent's card. He reads the stats aloud. Miller, 23 years old, standing at a towering 1.83 meters. His eyes widen as he analyzes the data. Miller competes in the welterweight division, a physical giant despite his youth. Hwang points to the second sheet. Seong studies the schedule, and his blood runs cold. The fight is set for September 9th. He looks up at Hwang in disbelief. Today is August 18th. He asks if this is some kind of clerical error. No mistake, Hwang says grimly. It is a replacement match. The original fighter pulled out with an injury. You are the substitute sacrifice. The reality is brutal. Seong has exactly 3 weeks to cut weight, dissect his opponent, and prepare for the fight of his life. Hwang does not sugarcoat it. Miller is bigger, stronger, and battle-hardened. This fight will be a war. Seong pauses, his mind racing for a strategy. After a long silence, Hwang breaks the tension. Any bright ideas? Seong reflects on the insanity of it all. Pros train for 3 months. Facing a top-tier monster with zero preparation is not just difficult, it is suicide. Yet, a fire ignites in Seong's eyes. He looks at the manager. I will do it, he declares. Hwang blinks, surprised by the rookie's guts. Are you sure? Once you step in, there is no turning back. Seong meets Hwang's gaze with unwavering intensity and confirms. Hwang studies him for a beat, then nods calmly. Sign tomorrow. Rest today. Seong asks if that was the only test. Hwang chuckles darkly. If you had hesitated for even a second, I would have shredded that invitation. Seong contemplates the brutality awaiting him in the cage. He starts to leave, but Hwang stops him at the door. One question, the manager says sharply. Seong turns back. Do your parents know you fight? Seong hesitates, the guilt evident on his face. He admits they have no idea he attends the gym, let alone fights in cages. Hwang sighs. I usually do not interfere, but you are their son. Do not walk into this war without their consent. Seong quickly promises to confess everything. He will tell them about his dangerous new path and ask for their blessing. Before Seong departs, Hwang offers a final piece of advice. Talk to them today. Make your choice by tomorrow. Is the timeline that tight? Seong asks. Hwang nods. We must answer the organization in 24 hours, or they will replace you too. Hwang warns him not to be stubborn or rebellious. Tell them the truth. If they agree, the cage is yours. Seong stands in the doorway, silence stretching between them. Then, he looks at Hwang with deadly seriousness. Manager, I have one more important question. Seong cuts straight to the chase. He needs to know if he turns down this competition, will fate offer him a second chance? Manager Jong falls silent, struggling to find the right answer. But Seong senses the tension and breaks it with a laugh, deciding not to push. He claims he was just asking, and promises to give his final answer by tomorrow. The manager nods in understanding. Seong assures him he'll handle his own affairs, pushing the door open to step out into the unknown. Left alone in the silence, Manager Jong ponders the weight of the situation. He wonders how to manage a wild card like Seong and the storms that are surely brewing. He decides to cross those bridges when they burn, sinking back into the sofa to relax. Yet, the unease about Seong lingers like a shadow he can't shake. Lee Wan's warning echoes in Seong's mind. The guilt creeps in. He knows his pursuit of sports has always been a heavy burden on his parents. The weight of the past crushes him. He realizes that escaping this cycle of worry and debt will be harder than any fight in the ring. Sports are a real pain, he mutters to the empty air. Collecting himself, Seong enters the house, making enough noise to announce his presence without startling his parents. They greet him warmly. His mother, sharp as ever, notes that he is back unusually early today. Then, the interrogation begins. She insists that if he has been training, he needs to hit the shower immediately. Seong counters that he already scrubbed down at the gym. But his mother is relentless. She claims the walk home alone was enough to make him sweat again. As Seong groans in protest, his mother shakes her head. She laments that he is exactly like his father, two men who treat hygiene like a chore. Speaking of the devil, his father is glued to the TV. A roar erupts from him as his favorite team finally finds the net. It is a miracle goal against the rival team, but in his explosion of joy, he loses all spatial awareness and accidentally shoves his wife aside. Retribution is instant. His mother unleashes a physical scolding on her husband, while Seong tries to find a gap in the chaos to speak. His mother, a master of tough love, finishes disciplining her husband and pivots to Seong with a deceptively sweet smile. The shower comes first. Talk comes later. Knowing better than to poke the tiger, Seong surrenders and heads to the bathroom. Cleaned up and nerves steeled, he sits before them. He lays it all out, the offer, the stakes, and asks for their blessing to enter the competition. The air in the room drops instantly. His mother's face darkens, prompting his father to tentatively ask what she thinks about their son's ambition. She scoffs, claiming her words are meaningless. In her eyes, Seong has always been a runaway train, rarely pausing to ask for permission before acting. His father steps in, urging her to soften her heart. He warns her against being too harsh. If she keeps pushing him away, he argues, Seong will shut them out completely. But her frustration boils over. She declares that nothing shocks her anymore. He could announce he is becoming a professional MMA fighter, and she wouldn't blink. Even so, his father stands his ground. He questions her anger, pointing out that their son is actually trying to include them in a life-changing decision. That is the breaking point. His mother's voice rises to a scream. She doesn't care about the details. She is absolutely, fundamentally against this path. Seong tries to de-escalate, pleading with her to listen. But she snaps, ordering him to shut his mouth until she has said her piece. Overcome with emotion, she reveals the true cost of his dreams. The sleepless nights, the years of scraping by on meager meals just to support his athletic career. Memories choke her voice. She describes how she cut off friends, isolated herself, and let her youth wither away all for him. And now, she declares this is the absolute last thing she ever wanted to hear. That after everything, he wants to throw his life away in the brutal world of MMA. Seong freezes, unable to interrupt her torrent of grief. She demands to know how much longer she must suffer for his whims when he never considers hers. She wanted him to think of her, just once. Finally, the adrenaline fades, leaving her breathless and red-faced in the ringing silence. She stands abruptly, retreating. She tells him to go ahead, ignore her warnings, like he always does. After all, the men in this house always chase their dreams, while she was left behind to clean up their messes. She turns to flee the room, but Seong moves fast. He catches her hand, begging her to stay for just one heartbeat more. His voice is steady but heavy with emotion. He tells her he knows. He knows every sacrifice she made, and he has carried the burning weight of shame for years because of it. That's why I'm asking, he insists. He pleads for her to trust him just one last time, swearing on his life that he won't let her down. His mother freezes, looking deep into his eyes, searching for the truth. But she sees the resolve in his gaze. He won't stop. Without a word, she pulls her hand free and turns her back on him. At the threshold, she speaks without looking back. Do whatever you want. I don't care anymore. Seong watches her disappear, his heart sinking into a deep well of sorrow. Seeing the conversation crash and burn, his father offers a lifeline. He tells Seong not to take it to heart. It is just a mother's terrifying love. I know, Seong replies calmly. He understands her language. Her rage is just fear that she doesn't know how to express. His father places a heavy, reassuring hand on Seong's shoulder, a broad smile breaking through the tension. The old man declared that his son had finally crossed the threshold into manhood, beginning to grasp the complex tapestry of human nature. But then, leaning in closer to Seong with a conspiratorial smirk, he whispered that the boy was still dead wrong about one thing, his mother. When Seong asked for clarification, his father dropped the truth bomb. The woman was perpetually furious. He pointed at Seong's neck, calling the bruises there irrefutable proof of her wrath. Realization dawned on Seong regarding the source of his mother's constant rage, but his father immediately switched gears, teasingly asking if the boy had grown bold enough to mock his own old man. Ignoring the jab, Seong cut to the heart of the matter. He asked if this meant his father actually supported his entry into the brutal competition. His father's answer was simple yet profound. He saw no issue with it, admitting it would be cruel to force a man to abandon his dreams just to appease another's disapproval. Seong smiled, remarking that his father wasn't just a stranger to him anymore, a sentiment that made the older man beam with pride. However, he offered a piece of wisdom. Seong needed to comfort his mother. Her intensity only existed because she had sacrificed everything for his sake. Nodding with solemnity, Seong vowed that he would stand by his beloved mother, no matter what. Sensing the moment was over, his father asked if there was anything else. Perhaps something Seong had conveniently forgotten to mention earlier. A cheeky grin spread across Seong's face as he approached. He needed to borrow the credit card for team expenses, shamelessly arguing it would help with reward points and tax deductions. Laughing, his father admitted the boy would go far with that kind of cunning. But then, his expression hardened into a serious mask. Did he plan to pay him back? Seong feigned shock, asking if his own father would truly be heartless enough to demand money from his struggling son. That was the final straw. His father turned to leave, declaring that he could hear the gears of a scam turning, branding his own flesh and blood a swindler. Seong shouted after him, claiming that nobody knows the future. Perhaps he would pay back double, nay, triple the amount once he achieved legendary fame. But the old man just scoffed, throwing back a taunt that he had heard that tune before. If Seong were truly destined for greatness, surely he would have ascended by now. Undeterred, Seong challenged him. Would he regret those doubting words when his son's face was plastered across every TV screen in the country? His father dismissed it as a fantasy that would never happen. So, Seong played his ace card. Would the old man regret it if he suddenly became best friends with an entire squad of gorgeous female fighters? The effect was instantaneous. The atmosphere in the room shifted in a heartbeat. His father spun around, grabbing Seong's hand in a vigorous shake. With eyes blazing, he demanded to know how much the future champion needed. Seong stared back with ironclad confidence, assuring him that this was an investment he would definitely not regret. Laughter erupted between father and son as they joked about the glorious future awaiting them. Meanwhile, unseen by the celebrating duo, Seong's mother had been listening from the shadows. She watched them through a sliver in the doorframe, her presence completely unnoticed. Accepting the inevitable truth that Seong would enter the competition regardless of her wishes, she quietly closed the door, retreating to her room to wrestle with her turbulent emotions. Scene shift. The narrative moves to a gritty corner of the city, where rival gyms forged the warriors who would soon stand in Seong's path. Inside one of these iron fortresses, a beast was preparing for war. This was the man destined to clash with Seong in just a few short weeks. Brian, a veteran of the ring, was a force of nature. He swung a massive sledgehammer against a tractor tire, each impact echoing like a gunshot. After several agonizing minutes of this brutality, his coach stepped in, ordering him to take a breather before he destroyed his own body. Panting, Brian demanded to know if the organization had called. The coach sighed. There were only 3 weeks left, but he insisted the officials were working on it. Brian couldn't hide his disbelief. He asked how it was possible that 60 fighters of his caliber had already been greenlit, yet after 2 weeks, they still hadn't found a single warrior worthy of stepping into the ring with him. The coach turned to Brian, warning him not to let frustration fuel his training. Overtraining now would only tear his muscles apart before the real battle even began. But Brian refused to slow down. If things kept dragging on, all his blood, sweat, and tears would be for nothing. Irritation flashed across the coach's face. He asked why Brian was acting so desperate, especially when he had only just begun his training cycle. Brian shot back that preparation meant nothing without a war to fight. It would all be pointless if he was left on the sidelines. Trying to diffuse the tension, the coach urged patience. He promised to personally hound the organization if they didn't reach out by the next morning. As the coach muttered about his fighter's difficult temperament, fate intervened. His phone buzzed, and he answered a call from the sports association. A brief exchange followed, but the outcome was clear. Brian's team had finally received their invitation to the slaughter. Vowing to have his fighter in peak condition, the coach ended the call. He turned to Brian with a smirk, telling the big guy that his doubts were unfounded. The call had finally come through. Brian asked if it was the head honcho himself. The coach confirmed it, adding the crucial detail. They had finally scraped together a substitute opponent. Brian expressed his relief, but the coach hesitated. He admitted that the name they gave was a complete unknown. He pulled up Seong's digital profile. Brian scoffed, guessing it was some rookie from Elite. But the coach corrected him. This kid hadn't even stepped foot in the Elite ranks yet. Brian shrugged it off with cold indifference. Rank didn't matter. He would continue his grueling training while this Seong prepared to meet his doom. Brian steels his resolve, telling himself that the fire of true training is finally burning before the real war begins. Later, Seong steps up to Park. But before the ink hits the paper, Park halts him. There are critical details they need to bury first. Park lays it out cold, stating that step 1 is negotiating the terms of entry. He drops a bombshell about the prize money, a 9-to-1 split. That means Seong pockets 90%, while the academy takes mere crumbs. Seong blinks, stunned. The industry standard is usually 70-30. He asks Park if the academy can even survive on such a pathetic cut. Park nods solemnly, confirming that Seong is absolutely right to worry. But his hands are tied. He cannot change the rules of the game. The director is stubborn, believing athletes are the gods of this arena. Park smirks, teasing him should they exploit that kindness and revert to the usual robbery. Seong cuts through the noise. He tells Park to stick to the contract and stop wasting time on insignificant hypotheticals. Park gets serious. This contract is unique. The prize pool sits at a staggering 2 million, with a winner's bonus of 50%. That means Seong could walk away with an extra cool million in his pocket. But there is a catch. Weight control is absolute. Miss the mark, and the fine ranges from 30% to a total wipeout of the prize pool. Park clarifies the danger 100% means forfeiting every single dime as a penalty. He shrugs, it is fair game. If a fighter is too lazy to cut weight, the organization owes them nothing. Park finishes the lecture. No more fine print, no hidden traps. Now, it is up to Seong. Seong cuts to the chase, asking the only question that matters. How much cash hits my hand when I win? Park grins, clearly amused. He did not expect Seong to be so blunt about the greed. He breaks down the math. Taxes and organization fees take their cut, leaving 700,000 for the sponsors. The end. Seong takes home a massive 3 million. 300,000. Seong's mind races years of slaving at a grocery store, could not scrape together 5 million. But here, one single fight changes his entire life. Park watches him like a hawk. He laughs, practically seeing the drool. Knowing Seong can smell the scent of serious money, he checks one last time for questions. The protagonist shakes his head. Crystal clear, but Park is not done. He clenches his fist lightly, eyes narrowing. One final, vital question hangs in the air. He asks if Seong plans to run away after this payout. Seong answers with fire in his eyes. He is going nowhere and will seize every opportunity. Park's expression darkens. He warns Seong if he does not give his absolute all, this will be his last chance. The words hit Seong like a physical blow. He stares at Park, trying to decode the gravity behind the threat. Park explains the harsh reality. This organization is not a charity. They do not burn money for fun. It is all about the show and the success. Winning is not enough. Losing is not an option. Seong must learn to command the crowd to steal their attention and never let go. Park pushes him. If skills are lacking, show arrogance, show confidence. And if power fails, show grit. If all else fails, demonstrate a resilience that refuses to break. Seong scoffs lightly, finding the lecture a bit excessive. But Park doubles down. He is speaking the truth of the industry. Treat fame lightly, and the fans will forget him before the blood dries on the mat. Seong nods, burning the advice into his brain. Park points to the dotted line sign there, then get back to the grind. The strategy phase begins. To crush Brian, brute force will not suffice. Seong asks what discipline they are diving into. Park is blunt. To survive this competition, Seong needs to master the art of tactical warfare. Time for action. Seong steps into the ring with Travis, the wrestling specialist, to forge the weapons he needs for victory. The bell barely echoes in their minds before Travis explodes forward, testing Seong's reflexes instantly. Seong freezes. The speed is unnatural. He has zero time to react before Travis closes the distance like a predator. Before Seong can even process the threat, it is too late. Travis locks onto him, neutralizing his defense in a heartbeat. Momentum slams them against the cage wall. Travis pins him down with a single, crushing arm. The protagonist chokes, coughing under the pressure, desperately searching for an escape route. Travis senses the victory. Knowing the battle is half won, he tightens the vice, crushing Seong's resistance into the dust. Park watches from the sidelines, unimpressed. He mocks Seong, asking if he oiled his legs given how easily he was swept away. A flashback hits 15 minutes ago. Park's voice echoes. Wrestling is the foundation for power. And now, it is Seong's new reality. Park breaks down the brutal efficiency of the wrestling style. It relies on a standard range of attacks and holds, but the true mastery lies in knowing exactly how to evade those very same moves. This creates a deadly illusion of simplicity. Outsiders think there's nothing special about it, but in reality, it requires a fighter to read his opponent's soul and possess elite-level training. Park warns that Brian, a monster of a man with vast experience, will definitely exploit his physique to lock him down. If Seong can't counter those grappling holds, he'll be eating the canvas before he even manages to throw a single punch. Realizing that grappling is the key to survival, Seong asks the million-dollar question. Can he really master an entirely new combat style in such a short time? Park smirks, reminding him of a detail he mentioned once before. He was a Korean wrestling athlete. The realization hits Seong like a truck. Park wasn't talking about generic wrestling, but Sirium, the ancient soul of Korean combat, a martial art forged in the sweat and struggle of the common people, honed over centuries of history. Seong's eyes light up with confidence. If it's Sirium, he fears no one. He declares that he can handle any opponent on the mat. Park nods. This hidden talent is a lethal ace up their sleeve, allowing Seong to adapt his striking instantly. He orders Seong to gear up. It's time to test that theory against Travis. Back in the present, Seong regrets his earlier arrogance. He was so sure of his strength, but Travis shattered that illusion in mere seconds, forcing him to question every skill he possesses. Travis's grip is like a vice made of steel. Seong feels his stamina being sucked away as if a giant vacuum is draining his very life force. Realizing he must gamble everything to survive, Seong executes a dirty tactic, driving his heel explicitly into Travis's leg. The veteran doesn't have time to react to the cheap shot. Seong manages to break his balance for a split second. Travis stumbles, his foundation crumbling as he grasps at empty air. Seong seizes the opening. He locks his hand onto Travis's shoulder for a special technique. Before the giant can recover, Seong rips himself free and hurls Travis toward the cage wall. Momentum is on his side. Seong charges like a bull, pinning Travis against the fence with every ounce of his remaining strength. Travis's eyes widen in shock. This rookie, he is far more dangerous than he initially seemed. Seong doesn't let up. He dives for the legs, aiming for a decisive takedown to end the fight right now. But Travis isn't a veteran for nothing. He reads the takedown instantly and counters, refusing to be humiliated by a newcomer. He sprawls, driving his weight down onto Seong's back, using gravity and leverage to crush the rookie's balance and regain control. From the sidelines, Jiu-Jitsu coach Suyak watches with a sharp gaze. The rumors were true. Seong is truly on Travis's level. He notes that Seong's center of gravity and instinct for holds are elite. He was born to succeed in Jiu-Jitsu. Park nods silently in agreement. He honestly expected Travis to mop the floor with the rookie, but Seong is defying all logic. Inside the clinch, Travis is sweating bullets. He knows that if this grind continues, Seong will bleed his energy dry. Desperate, Travis leverages his massive weight advantage to flip Seong, a move honed by years of heavyweight warfare. Park notes, the difference in experience is showing. Seong scrambles to escape the iron grip, but Travis is relentless. He dodges the counterstrikes and closes the distance again. Before Seong can blink, Travis snatches him up and launches him over his shoulder in a beautiful arc of violence. Seong tries to leap back to safety at the last second, but he's too slow. Travis grabs him and hoists him completely off the ground. Travis spots the opening in Seong's upper guard, but Seong is already moving. He fires another sharp kick to the leg. The grip breaks. Even Travis has to mentally applaud the kid using unconventional chaos to escape a hopeless situation. Seong creates distance, gasping for air. Travis grins, boasting that he's blocked every move so far, using just the basics he learned in school. He warns the rookie, "I know plenty of advanced moves. I'm not as simple as I look." But Seong wipes the sweat from his brow, his eyes burning with defiance. "Save your surprise. I've still got plenty of cards left to play. No more words." They launch at each other again, two forces of nature on a collision course. They slam together in the center of the ring, pushing their bodies past the breaking point to assert dominance. Park watches with deep satisfaction. He feared the wrestler wouldn't survive the transition to MMA. He worried Seong was just chasing glory without respect for the sport, treating it like a game. But MMA demands absolute respect, and Seong is finally showing it. Time skip. It's Judgment Day, the official weigh-in. As Park drives them to the venue, the tension is palpable. He asks for the final number. Seong replies instantly, 77 kilograms and 300 grams. Park does the mental math. The X1 League allows up to 500 grams of excess weight. It's going to be tight. He shoots a sharp look at Seong regarding the additional weigh-in. "Did you put anything in your mouth today?" Seong's voice is cold and absolute. "Not a crumb." Park checked his watch and asked about the hydration plan. Seong grinned, knowing the drill wrestling had taught him that every drop of water could be the enemy on the scale. But suddenly, a sharp voice cut through the air. Eugene Min stepped in, annoyed that the rookie's answer always circled back to his glory days on the wrestling mat. Seong shot her a sideways glance. "Why are you solo today?" Eugene scoffed, claiming the rest of the team was too tied up with actual work to babysit them. Seong wasn't having it. He waved her off, telling her to stand back and let the real fighters talk business without the commentary track. Eugene crossed her arms, eyes flashing dangerous sparks. "Fine, but don't come crying to me when your gear goes missing without a guard dog to watch it." That struck a nerve. Seong stepped into her personal space, sneering that a glorified gatekeeper shouldn't interrupt the talent just to feel important. Veins popped on Eugene's forehead. She turned to the coach, dead serious. "Coach Park, permission to destroy this arrogant brat right here and now?" Park just chuckled, amused by the chaos. "Music to my ears. I see you two are bonding beautifully already." Shifting gears, Park asked how Seong's crew took the big news about his debut. Seong shrugged. "The truth? He hadn't spilled a single word to them yet." Park sighed, shaking his head at the wasted opportunity. "You should have brought them, kid. Every fighter needs a cheering squad to fuel the fire." "I'll tell them when I win," Seong declared. But Eugene smirked, dropping a venomous whisper. "Or maybe you're just terrified they'll watch you get crushed in public." Instead of exploding, Seong flashed a wide, unnerving smile. "You know, you're actually spot on." Eugene blinked, completely caught off guard by his sudden honesty. Before she could recover, he lightly tapped her forehead with a grin. "Keep analyzing me like that, and you might just get a love tap in the ring." "That did it," Eugene snapped. deciding to humble the rookie herself, and launched into the fray with zero hesitation. "You moron! How dare you touch my face!" she screamed. Park watched the brawl, thinking this chaotic duo was destined for either a headache or greatness. Finally, the team rolled up to the venue. The engine cut, and the real tension began to settle in as they parked the car. Seong and Eugene marched toward the entrance, stepping into the cavernous hall where destinies would be weighed in gold and sweat. Inside, Seong froze. His jaw dropped. He had never seen a spectacle like this, a massive sea of bodies gathered just to watch fighters step on a scale. "Close your mouth, kid," Park commanded, not breaking his stride. "Stop staring like a tourist and follow me." Eugene rolled her eyes at his innocence. "Impressed by trivial things, aren't we?" They pushed through to their designated zone, Park signaling them to settle in. Seong moved to take his seat, following orders, but a sudden shift in the air stopped him cold. A presence was watching him. He turned slowly. There, just meters away, sat the enemy. Brian. The opponent was sitting there, seemingly lost in his own world, eyes locked on the target. Seong nudged his coach, his voice dropping an octave. "He's right there, my opponent." "I saw him," Park replied coolly. "Stop staring. Save the intensity for the face-off. Don't give him free rent in your head right now." "Can't I just say hello?" Seong asked, itching for contact. Park shut it down. "Waste of breath. You'll introduce your fists to his face tomorrow." Seong stole one last glance, and the coach's words finally clicked. This wasn't a social club. It was war preparation. He realized quickly that Brian wasn't just ignoring him, he was dismissing him. The guy knew Seong was watching, and simply didn't care. Feeling the weight of that silence, Seong looked away. Not a word was spoken, yet the air between them crackled with suffocating pressure. Suddenly, the speakers boomed to life. The announcer roared, declaring that the weigh-in for the qualifiers had begun. "Blue corner, step up to the judgment seat. One observer per team," the voice echoed through the hall. "We need eyes on the scale. Accuracy is law in this house." The schedule was set. Main cards next, then the headliners, followed by the rest of the pack. The clock was ticking. Park turned to grab his fighter and stopped dead. Seong was already standing there, stripped down to his underwear. Asterisk whack. Asterisk Eugene slammed a hand into Seong's back, mortified by his brainless exhibitionism in front of the crowd. Seong spun around to face Eugene, asking if she had lost her mind. "Why are you hitting me? There's no reason to keep my pants on before the call." Seong shrugged, rubbing his back. "I took them off early because I have to strip later anyway. Why waste the energy?" "Lower your voice," Eugene whispered furiously, her face burning red. "And why? Why is your underwear so thin? Have some shame, you idiot. You just don't understand the tactical importance of breathability," Seong scoffed. Before she could retort, the announcer waved a hand. It was showtime. "That's my cue," Seong announced, strutting toward the stage with absolute confidence. He stepped onto the machine. The numbers flickered and locked instantly. His weight was perfect for the pass. 77 kilograms and 200 grams, the announcer declared. As Seong returned, Park asked for a status report, but Eugene cut in. "You barely deserve to be a pro if you can't even handle a weigh-in with dignity." Seong smirked at her nagging. "You reek of admiration, Eugene. Just admit you're impressed by my physique." "I don't care about your ego," she snapped, shoving his pants into his chest. "Cover up. Now. It's a sauna in here," Seong complained, trying to toss the pants back. "Are you a savage?" Eugene growled. "Put them on. Look around," Seong argued, gesturing to the sea of half-naked fighters. "Everyone is in their gear. I feel great." Eugene wasn't listening, forcefully trying to dress a grown man. Suddenly, the noise around them died down. Eugene froze. She looked aside to see dozens of eyes glued to their little wrestling match, and the misunderstanding was written all over their faces. A sudden, crushing wave of humiliation crashes over her. Her face ignites in a bright crimson flush, eyes widening in sheer disbelief at the sight before her. Screaming that Seong is a complete moron, she hurls his pants straight at his head, spins around, and sprints away as if her life depends on it. Seong watches Eugene Min retreat in total confusion, wondering what sparked such panic, just as the announcer's voice booms through the hall, declaring Brian's weight at 77 kilograms. The atmosphere shifts instantly as the official calls for Seong and Brian to step forward for the face-off. Seong steps up to the plate, standing shoulder to shoulder with Brian, as cameras flash, capturing the tension for the promotional shots. Analyzing his opponent with a predator's gaze, Seong notices the gaunt look of exhaustion, the telltale sign of a brutal, high-level weight cut that means tomorrow, a monster will step into that ring. Doubts creep in about defeating such a seasoned pro, while Brian stands there, radiating silent, seething annoyance. Seong glances over, only to be met with Brian's sneer and a condescending question about whether he even belongs in the major leagues. Confused by the sudden hostility, Seong questions Brian's sanity in taking this match. pointing out that Brian is the one risking embarrassment against a supposed amateur. He wonders what triggered this aggression, but the veteran fighter isn't finished yet. Brian scoffs, claiming Seong must have a powerful sponsor pulling strings to get him into this cage without climbing the ranks. Seong realizes these aren't random insults. There's intent behind them, and the sheer irritation of the accusation starts to grate on his nerves. The referee steps in to check the provocation, but Brian pivots back to Seong, his voice dropping to warn that despite the setup, they better put on a show. When Seong stays silent, Brian's ego flares, demanding an answer when he speaks. That's the last straw. The protagonist's patience snaps, and he coldly remarks that Brian is just making a lot of empty noise. Blindsided by the rookie's backbone, Brian pauses, trying to process the audacity. Seong cuts deep, reminding him that Brian was the one begging for a replacement 3 weeks out, and he is only here to clean up the veteran's mess. He adds that Brian should be thanking him for saving the event, suggesting that if he's so miserable, he should just forfeit and go home. A twisted smile spreads across Brian's face. He has no logical comeback for the cold, hard truth. Seong shrugs, noting that he only spoke up because Brian decided to start posturing like a fool. The words strike a nerve. Brian steps into Seong's personal space, asking if he has any final prayers before he ends his pathetic existence. Seong doesn't flinch, meeting the death threat with absolute, chilling indifference. Brian starts boasting that he could smear Seong against the wall in a heartbeat, but his monologue is cut short by a lightning-fast chop to the throat. Choking on his own words, Brian stumbles back, clutching his neck and gasping for air after the precise, ruthless strike. Eyes burning with murder, he glares up at Seong, screaming curses as he prepares to lunge for the kill. However, coaches and referees swarm in instantly, restraining the enraged fighter before the press conference turns into a bloodbath. Unfazed, Seong calmly retrieves his clothes, remarking that if Brian has that much energy, he should save it for the cage. He turns to leave but pauses, deciding to plant one final thorn in his opponent's pride. Locking eyes with the fuming veteran, Seong points out there's only a 1-year age gap between them, so Brian needs to drop the condescending elder act. Hours later, under the cover of night, Seong returns to the sanctuary of his home to prepare for the coming war. Opening the door, he announces his return loud and clear, trying not to startle his parents with his stealthy presence. Scanning the room, he realizes his mother is alone and asks about his father's whereabouts. She answers without looking up. His father has been dragged out fishing by his boss. Seong sighs at the absurdity of modern corporate slavery, forced weekend fishing trips in the 21st century, while a heavy silence settles over the room. He stands there, unsure how to bridge the gap, while his mother ignores him, burying herself in endless housework. Breaking the tension, Seong steps forward and gently wraps his arms around her from behind. She stiffens, telling him to let go because of the laundry, but he holds on, whispering that tomorrow is the big fight. He asks what this means to her, confessing that her support would give him the strength to fight harder than ever before. Silence answers him. A long, painful pause that confirms he won't get the encouragement he desperately craves. Masking the hurt with a hollow laugh, he pulls away, joking that he's heading to bed and mentioning the broadcast time. He tells her it starts at 8 o'clock tomorrow, leaving the invitation hanging in the air. Shoulders slumped, he retreats to his room, the crushing realization settling in that he has lost his mother's warmth forever. Suddenly, her voice stops him. She turns, asking if he wants a meal, insisting he needs to eat well to have strength for the battle tomorrow. A genuine smile breaks across Seong's face. She cares after all, and he softly tells her not to worry. However, his mother lifts her chin with haughty pride. She declares that he shouldn't fool himself. She refuses to let him use her as an excuse for his defeat later. But after taking only a few steps, she turns back. Her voice softens as she asks what he craves for dinner. Spaghetti, he replies instantly. He adds that he needs a massive portion to fuel the energy required for the battle ahead. She orders him to wash up and wait while she cooks. Beneath her cold exterior, Seong realizes his mother truly cares. A mischievous grin spreads across his face. In one fluid motion, he sweeps her off her feet. Despite her loud protests, she feels light as a feather in his arms. Seong notes that it has been ages since he carried her like this. But she remains indignant, demanding he put her down this instant. The next day, the moment of truth arrives. Inside the arena, specifically prepared for the event, the stage lights slowly flicker to life. Meanwhile, Team Seong wastes no time. They continue their relentless training to ensure their fangs are sharp for the fight. Hwang steps into the prep room. There, he finds Coach Park absorbing heavy impacts with special training mitts. After a tense session, Park calls time. He announces the training is over and orders Seong to conserve his strength. The protagonist collapses into a chair, exhaling a heavy sigh. Soo-hyuk marvels at Seong's condition, but Park's expression darkens. That perfection, Park mutters, is exactly what terrifies me. Hwang approaches the young fighter. He places a hand on Seong's shoulder, testing the tension beneath his grip. Incredibly loose. The team leader notes with surprise. Was the training so light that you didn't even break a sweat? Seong replies that his body relaxed the moment it sensed Hwang's arrival. Hwang smirks. He has two final pieces of wisdom for this duel. First, Hwang commands, smash your opponent's face in. Seong hesitates. From his tactical perspective, a direct hit seems nearly impossible. Hwang encourages him immediately. Don't be impulsive. Use your head and plan your tactics. Stay relaxed. Move like the wind. Provoke the enemy into a mistake, then crush him with a calculated strategy. Seong listens intently, absorbing every word. And the second tip? Hwang's gaze hardens. If chaos reigns, lock on to Coach Park's voice. Do not panic. Park will be your lighthouse. Seong remains silent. The sudden quiet unnerves Hwang, who wonders why the boy has gone mute. What if? Seong begins slowly. My instincts scream the opposite of Park's advice. Hwang blinks, completely caught off guard. When Hwang asks for clarification, Seong explains. Usually, I can see the path to victory clearly, but if Park orders a different move, I'll hesitate. Park looks up with a scowl, but Hwang cuts in. In that case, do what you think is best. Seong asks if he is sure. Trust your gut, Hwang replies firmly. But keep your impulses on a leash to avoid a fatal error. Coach Park tries to object, but the arena speakers drown him out. The announcer declares that the fighters and the formidable Brian must prepare for war. Hwang immediately shoves Seong toward the exit. Go! It is time to prove your worth to the world. He signals Park to keep a close watch, then trails behind his student. Adrenaline surges through Seong's veins like liquid fire. This is it. His first time stepping onto the stage of such a legendary competition. The tunnel is pitch black, but the end blazes with intensity. As he steps forward, the arena lights pierce directly into his eyes. Blinking against the glare, the world comes into focus. A massive X1 banner hangs high above a pristine octagon, surrounded by thousands of screaming fans. The breathtaking view hits him hard. In that moment, Seong realizes he is no longer the same person he used to be. Soo-hyuk leans in, shouting over the noise to ask if Seong is nervous about the upcoming slaughter. My mind is perfect, Seong replies calmly. His confidence brings a genuine smile to Hwang's face. Warm up well, Hwang says, stepping aside. Showtime is near. Suddenly, Coach Park looms nearby, clearing his throat with aggressive loudness. Hwang turns to him. What's with the noise? Park, feigning confusion, asks what he means. Hwang clarifies. I'm talking about your attitude before Seong left. I'm responsible for this fight, and he needs to follow my orders to win. Hwang sighs, suggesting Park give the boy some space. Let him fight his own battle. Coach Park objects furiously. It's Seong's professional debut. We can't just let him run wild in there. He isn't a monster like you, Hwang. If he listens to you and loses, the shock could destroy his career forever. Hwang's gaze softens. Seong confided in me. He's sick of being a puppet. That's why he rejected the contract with the elite club. Who knows how long he'll last in this brutal profession, Hwang adds. It's worth letting him make his own decisions, just this once. Besides, he mentions with a glint in his eye, there's no proof this is his last fight. Let's see what the kid can really do. Park grumbles that Hwang's speech was unnecessarily long. Hwang retorts irritably, don't pretend you actually listened to any of it. The commentators' voices boom through the stadium. The main event is finally here. From the blue team, Seong is the first to be summoned into the ring. He steps into the spotlight. The announcer highlights the insanity of it all. A complete rookie, with only 40 days of MMA training. He hasn't even competed in the amateur league. Despite having zero official presence in the records, this rookie is a hidden monster. He annihilated a semi-pro opponent with a single, devastating punch and dominated every sparring session like a predator playing with food. The second announcer can hardly believe it. It is unheard of for a rookie to step onto a stage this massive. The question on everyone's mind, can he survive the crushing pressure of the professional league? His colleague scoffs, confident in the outcome. For a talent like Seong, this should be a walk in the park. The only variable tonight is how badly he destroys Brian. The arena explodes with noise as the announcer introduces the red corner. Brian, the rising star with 3 ruthless victories already carved into his belt. The crowd roars, convinced another win is inevitable. Meanwhile, Seong finishes his warm-up in silence. His coach, Hwan, is a nervous wreck, shouting at him to stay calm and keep his feet moving. Seong adjusts his gloves, his expression stone cold. He replies with a voice devoid of fear, promising he won't let his coach down tonight. The atmosphere reaches a fever pitch. The announcers declare the start of tonight's main event, X61. The first battle of the 77-kilogram weight class is about to begin. Standing in the blue corner, measuring 178 centimeters. The mysterious dark horse, the athlete shrouded in shadows. Moments later, the spotlight shifts. In the red corner, standing at a towering 185 centimeters, the future king of the welterweight division, Brian. The referee calls them to the center, the air thick with tension. Seong's eyes scan his opponent like a scanner. He notes the razor-sharp definition of Brian's muscles, a dangerous transformation from the soft physique he displayed at the weigh-in. A realization hits the protagonist. This isn't a game. He has to be flawless. One mistake against this upgraded body could mean instant defeat. Breaking the silence, Brian leans in, his voice dripping with arrogance. He sneers that someone needs to teach the rookie a harsh lesson about the professional world. Brian's eyes narrow with irritation, spitting out a final threat. He vows that this fight will be the last time Seong ever steps into a professional ring. But Brian's threats crash against a wall of indifference. Seong looks him dead in the eye, calls him a total loser, and asks, "Are you still crying about what happened yesterday?" The insult leaves Brian frozen in shock. Before Brian can recover, Seong twists the knife deeper. "I thought you were just rude, but it turns out you're stupid too." He commands the veteran to shut up and focus on the fight. The referee steps between the sparking tension, ordering them to touch gloves. The pleasantries are over. It is time for war. They drift apart, creating a few meters of killing space. The referee demands confirmation. A nod from the blue, a nod from the red. The signal is given. Fight! Watching from the shadows behind the cage, Park analyzes the rookie's posture. Seong looks completely relaxed, radiating a terrifying level of confidence. Park turns to his assistant, Suyok, and gives a chilling order. Get the ice bucket and petroleum jelly ready now. He knows the violence is about to start early. Suddenly, the announcers scream in pure disbelief. Chaos erupts in the ring before anyone can blink. Park and Suyok snap their heads back toward the cage. What Park sees freezes the blood in his veins. He stands paralyzed, his mind struggling to process the impossible sight before him. It happened in a split second. Seong has already landed a thunderous punch, and the rising star Brian is flat on the canvas. Just moments ago, while Park was turning away, Brian had lunged forward, hungry to crush the rookie and seize the momentum instantly. Arrogance poured off Brian as he shouted, claiming he could see every twitch of Seong's muscles, demanding the rookie try something harder. Seong ignored the noise. He unleashed a lightning-fast counter straight to Brian's face. The impact was devastating, shattering the attack and dropping the giant instantly. Lying on the floor, Brian's mind is blank. He cannot comprehend what just transpired. A burning agony explodes across his face. The sheer force of the blow sends shockwaves through his body, making him stagger backward even as he tries to rise. Seong shows no mercy. Seizing the opening, he follows up with a second catastrophic punch from his other hand, connecting squarely with Brian's jaw. Brian's body gives out. Unable to withstand the momentum, he crashes to the ring floor with a sickening thud, triggering a tidal wave of gasps from the audience. The announcer loses his mind, shouting incoherently. Pure shock reverberates through the stadium. Nobody expected the favorite to be dismantled in the opening seconds of the first round. Regaining his voice, the announcer roars into the microphone. Seong has knocked Brian down within the first 10 seconds. Unbelievable. Adrenaline forces Brian back to his feet, but his eyes are wide with terror and fascination. He stares at the rookie, unable to believe that a nobody just put him on his back. Seong isn't here to play games. He surges forward, arm cocked back like a loaded gun, aiming a finisher that will crush Brian's hopes of victory forever. "Move!" Brian's coach screams from the sidelines, his voice cracking with desperation. "Recover! Don't just stand there like a statue." The scream pierces through the fog in Brian's brain. It jolts him awake. Survival instinct takes over. Brian realizes death is inches away. In a blur of motion, he leaps backward, narrowly dodging Seong's decapitating strike. He lives to fight another second. Brian scrambles to a stable stance, his eyes locked on Seong. He analyzes every twitch, desperate to predict the next move and avoid falling into another deadly trap. The announcer questions the veteran's sloppy start. Why did he let his guard down? In the professional arena, pride is a death sentence. Brian stares at the monster across the ring. He forces his breathing to slow down. Calm down, he tells himself. Focus. Even though he lost the initiative, the fight isn't over. He just needs one chance to turn the tables and regain control. But Seong doesn't give him time to think. The rookie charges like a raging bull. Brian realizes with horror his opponent is too fast to track. Before Brian can even raise his guard, Seong plants a heavy fist directly into his face. There is no time to block. The punch connects with the force of a freight train, amplified by Seong's forward momentum. Brian is launched several meters backward, flying through the air. The impact rattles his brain inside his skull. Brian is left completely stunned, his sense of space obliterated, drifting in a void of disorientation. By some miracle, Brian defies gravity. He wrenches his body back, barely managing to stay on his feet. But Seong is a storm that refuses to settle. He doesn't give him a single breath of respite. The predator locks onto his prey. Seeing Brian's turtle shell defense, Seong shifts focus to the exposed vitals. You asked for this. Seong pours every ounce of destruction into his fists, punishing Brian's arrogance with raw power. Brian is drowning in the onslaught. He desperately blocks the heavy artillery, but his fortress is beginning to crack. Got him. Seong exploits a microgap and buries his fist into Brian's side. A scream of pure agony rips through the arena, but the damage to his ego is far worse than his body. Roaring like a wounded beast, Brian abandons reason for blind rage. That desperation is his downfall. In his haste to strike back, he leaves himself wide open. Brian throws a haymaker, but he's hitting air. Seong ducks right, loading up a counter that screams execution. Before Brian can even blink, bang! A full-force impact explodes directly onto his jaw. The giant stumbles. Unable to withstand the kinetic force, Brian reels backward, his dignity crumbling with every step. But he refuses to stay down. Eyes bloodshot with fury, he prepares one last, reckless gamble for revenge. Summoning the last dregs of his strength, he charges. Die, he screams, throwing his life on the line. He raises his hand to strike. But Seon's eyes are cold. He saw this coming 10 moves ago. He doesn't strike yet. He lets the fist come close, waiting for the perfect split second to maximize the humiliation. Just as Brian tastes victory, Seong vanishes, a sidestep, followed by a punishing cross straight to the face. The triumph turns to terror in an instant. Brian's soul freezes as he realizes the sheer gap in their speed. The world tilts on its axis. Brian staggers away, his equilibrium completely shattered by the concussion. Seong smells blood. Seeing his opponent wide open, he moves in to end this nightmare once and for all. But wait, the stumble was a lie. It's a trap set by a desperate predator. Like a viper, Brian lunges. He locks on, attempting a death roll grapple he's honed for years. Seong plants his feet like roots of an ancient tree. He strains every muscle to deny the takedown. Brian's grip begins to slip. He looks up in horror, unable to comprehend how Seong is still standing. With a roar, Seong shatters the hold. He shoves Brian back, creating the kill zone he needs. The force sends Brian flying. He crashes into the cage fence, clinging to the mesh just to stay upright. Unbelievable, the caster screams. A 40-day rookie is toying with a veteran like a child. Nobody wrote this in the script. We are witnessing a miracle in the ring tonight. Watching from the sidelines, Park is stunned. He was certain Seong would be the underdog here. Yet, the boy is dominating. Despite the weight class difference, Seong has owned every second of this fight. Park racks his brain. How is a novice landing critical hits with such terrifying precision? Back in the ring, Seong rushes in. He looks ready to grapple, aiming to beat the wrestler at his own game. Brian's eyes narrow. Grappling now? You fool. That's for defense, not offense. But too late, he realizes. The grapple was just a ghost. Seong shifts gears instantly. A thunderous punch connects squarely with Brian's nose. Brian stands frozen, his brain unable to process the sudden violence. Park's jaw drops. Feints? Irregular rhythm? He's rewriting the textbook mid-fight. It's just like the qualifiers. Seong isn't fighting. He's destroying his opponent's rhythm. You can't do that on instinct alone, Park realizes. He planned this. Seong locks his hands behind Brian's neck. Launching himself into the air, he drives a devastating knee toward the target. Look at that height, the announcer roars. A perfect flying knee aimed right at the skull. Impact. Brian collapses to his knees, his consciousness fading as he pays the price for his mistakes. The arena explodes with noise. Seong just executed the impossible. The giant has fallen. Brian crashes onto the canvas, completely stripped of his balance. Blind and broken, Brian crawls forward on instinct. He's trying to pass guard, the commentator gasps, but Seong is too far away. He needs to wake up now. If he doesn't, he is signing his own death warrant. At that precise moment, Seong's fist crashes into the back of Brian's skull, a brutal reminder. He warned him. This is the heavy price of arrogance. Coiling his muscles for the finale, Seong's eyes burn cold. Brian should have brought skill and steel to this ring, not just empty boasts. No more talk. Seong swings with the force of a wrecking ball, a devastating hook designed for one purpose, total unconsciousness. Brian is already dazed, a deer in the headlights. He has zero time to react before Seong's judgment lands. The impact is absolute. The force is so catastrophic that Brian's mouthguard, his last line of defense, goes spinning into the void. Time itself seems to freeze. The entire arena holds its breath, watching Brian's consciousness fade into the abyss under the weight of that monster hit. Park stands paralyzed in shock, while Coach Hwang and Soo-yok erupt in wild cheers. But across the ring, Brian's team watches in horror as their golden boy is dismantled in minutes. The referee dives in instantly. He waves his arms, shielding the fallen fighter and ordering Seong to cease fire. Seong's reaction is razor-sharp. He freezes mid-motion, the perfect discipline of a true martial artist. As he straightens up, the roar of the crowd fades in. The announcers are screaming, declaring this an ending nobody saw coming. Looking toward the lights, Seong hears the disbelief in their voices. The match ended in just 1 minute and 49 seconds. A result that defies logic. The electricity of triumph surges through his veins. Seong clenches his fists, savoring the moment as the commentators etch this fight into history. Seong raises his arms to the heavens. The announcer bellows his name, cementing his undeniable domination over Brian in record-breaking time. As the adrenaline fades and night claims the sky, the team gathers their gear and heads for the exit, leaving the glory behind. They pile into the car, the engine humming as they begin the long journey home. Seong, having left his soul in the ring, finally lets his guard down. Exhaustion takes over, and he drifts into a warrior's slumber. Coach Hwang, gripping the steering wheel, glances back and asks Park, "Is he really out cold already?" He warns him not to wake the kid he earned this rest, but Hwang smirks, clarifying his target. He wasn't talking about Seong. He meant the massive Soo-hyuk, who is already passed out and snoring like a chainsaw. The snoring amplifies, vibrating the entire car. Park and Coach Hwang exchange a look of sheer dread. The realization hits them both. This is going to be a long, torturous drive back to the gym. Still, Park shakes off the annoyance. He turns to the coach, his voice serious. Today, that was something else. He admits the truth. He never imagined Seong would dodge every single strike and end it with a first-round knockout. It was flawless. Coach Hwang grips the wheel tighter. "I knew the kid was good," he mutters. "But that fast? Even I didn't see that coming." The coach smiles, touching his chest. "It's been a long time since my heart raced like that for a fight." But hearing this, a shadow falls over Park's face. Despite Seong's magnificent victory, a heavy weight of guilt settles in Park's gut. He drifts into a memory from just moments ago. The image of Soo-hyuk hoisting Seong onto his shoulders, parading him like a king before the roaring crowd. Seong's face had been glowing with pure, unadulterated joy. He had proven his worth to the world. He was a real fighter now. Coach Hwang had been beaming, shouting that Seong had done an excellent job. But amidst the celebration, Park felt hollow. He realized with a pang of sadness, he hadn't contributed a single thing to this victory. Suddenly, in the memory, Seong hopped down from Soo-hyuk's shoulders and turned directly to Park, asking for a moment. Park looked up to see his fighter approaching. "I won my debut," Seong said. Park hesitated, then forced a smile. "Great job, Seong. You deserved it." But Seong tilted his head. "I didn't hear your voice once out there, Park. Did I miss a signal in the heat of the moment?" Park felt a lump in his throat. "No," he replied softly. "I stayed quiet because you were perfect. There was nothing to correct. It was the truth." The fight was incredible. Seong had given his heart and soul, annihilating his opponent in the first round without a single command. Back in the car, the guilt eats at him. Park mentally kicks himself. He promised Seong he would be there for him, that he would help. Yet when the bell rang, he froze. Not a word. It was as if he had abandoned his fighter when it mattered most. He glances at Coach Hwang. Unlike Park, the coach knew exactly what Seong needed. He instilled confidence. He guided him. Of course, it wasn't just coaching that won the fight. Seong's talent is real, but there's no denying it. Coach Hwang steered the ship through the storm. Park stares at the older man with deep admiration. The coach's sensitivity, his mastery of fighter psychology. Does Hwang even know how much Park respects him? Coach Hwang catches Park staring. He raises an eyebrow suspiciously. "What? You giving me those puppy dog eyes to get a raise?" Park scoffs, defensive. "Don't twist my sincere respect into something cheap, old man." Hwang starts grumbling immediately. "Save the fake praise. You're just trying to butter me up so you can start arguing again." Park shoots back. "When was the last time I did that? I only nag you because you don't shave for days. You look like a hobo in the locker room." The atmosphere lightens instantly. For Park, this bickering is familiar territory, a mask to hide the turmoil within. Seong snaps back, raising his voice. He tells Hwang to stop making excuses for him. He isn't skipping the gym for some noble reason. He admits he is just being lazy. Hwang matches his energy instantly, accusing Park of picking a fight just for the sake of arguing. The manager's grumbling intensifies. He claims he has never seen Park take the wheel before, accusing him of constantly exploiting every situation to do less work. Park shoots back a sharp glare, asking why they are suddenly digging this up now. But Hwang is on a roll and refuses to stop. He declares that Park is driving the rest of the way, no matter what. He digs up old dirt, recalling the time Park swiped the company card without asking. He burned through 600,000 won on a team dinner. Hwang continues his rant, lamenting how he scrapes and saves every one, while Park stuffs his face with expensive meals. Meanwhile, Park doesn't hold back at all. He buys energy drinks without a second thought, all while claiming he respects his senior. Deciding this conversation is a dead end, Park pulls out his headphones. He cranks the volume to the max, selecting the most soothing track to drown out the noise. Peace washes over him as the music takes over, while the executive beside him continues to rant into the void. Huang lists every little irritation, completely oblivious that his audience has checked out and no one is listening. Gazing at the starry night sky, Park sighs. He respects Huang deeply, but some parts of the man's personality really test his patience. The next morning brings a fresh start. He decides to meet his crew and arranges a gathering at Eden Cafe, a spot conveniently close to home. He dresses in stealth mode, donning the most low-key clothes he has and pulling a cap down to stay unrecognized. Seong steps into the cafe, scanning for his group. But his disguise fails instantly. His best friends spot him and scream his name, shattering his cover. He spins around toward the sudden noise. Two familiar faces are waving frantically to grab his attention. Seong flashes a wide grin and strolls over. He teases them, asking how they can sip coffee so casually when a genuine superstar is approaching. His friends roll their eyes. They joke that Seong has lost his mind and actually believes his own hype. Seong drops happily into a chair. One friend compliments the recent event but has to ask why fight in the ring wearing nothing but trunks. Seong corrects him with mock dignity. That isn't just underwear, they are professional boxers. His friend waves off the technicality. The real issue is the secrecy. Why didn't he tell them? They had to find out about the fight through the internet. The protagonist sighs. He barely had time to breathe, let alone text. His mind was locked on the match. He had only 3 weeks to prepare for war. The group is stunned. They ask if he starved himself for 3 straight weeks just to make weight. One friend laughs, joking that talking to Seong is pointless now. Apparently, their long school history means nothing to a big shot. Suddenly, the vibe shifts. His friend notices the atmosphere changing. Other customers are staring at Seong with wide eyes. A quick scan reveals the truth. People have recognized the victor from yesterday's fight, and excited whispers are filling the room. Seong quickly adjusts his cap. His friends poke fun immediately, noting he is acting like a paranoid celebrity now. The protagonist scoffs. He claims he just found the cap and wore it. It has nothing to do with fame. But internally, Seong knows the truth. On the way here, he caught several admiring glances while riding public transport. It is a jarring contrast. For 10 years of grueling training, he was invisible to the world. Now, after a single 2-minute brawl, the world suddenly knows his name and celebrates his success. Uncomfortable with the spotlight, Seong pivots. He asks his friends how their own lives are going. Charlie shrugs. He is grinding at a part-time job and preparing to head back to school next year. Seong smiles, suggesting Charlie just land a full-time gig. Though, he doubts that will happen without sacrificing his grades. Charlie defends himself. He just finished a technical course, but the road ahead is steep. He has to work himself to the bone just to graduate. Then, a bombshell drops. Ryan announces he is becoming a public servant, shocking the entire table. Seong and Charlie freeze. They stare at Ryan in silence, waiting for the punchline. When none comes, they burst into laughter. An officer? Him? The guy who was the ultimate slacker in school? Ryan fires back amidst the mockery. He reminds them that their grades and effort weren't exactly legendary either. The tension dissolves into nostalgia. They lose track of time, happily trading stories of old adventures and school day disasters. Their laughter is cut short. Seong's phone vibrates violently against the table, demanding attention. He fishes it out and checks the screen. His heart sinks slightly. It is his father calling. He decides to face the music, sliding his thumb across the screen to answer his father's call. His father's voice crackles through, asking if he is busy. Seong keeps it casual, replying that he is just chilling with the guys, but quickly asks if something serious has happened. The older man sighs, explaining that he is stuck at a corporate event that is dragging on, meaning he will not be making it home until much later tonight. Then, the tone shifts slightly. His father asks point blank if Seong is drinking alcohol while out relaxing with his friends. Seong immediately denies it, stating he is stone cold sober, but he cannot help asking why his father is suddenly so curious about his drinking habits. The reason is simple, but heavy. His mother will be home all alone tonight. His father suggests it would be good if Seong returned early to share dinner with her. The realization hits Seong like a truck. He suddenly understands everything. Picturing his mother waiting in the empty house, hoping for his return all evening. He bites his lip, a bitter cocktail of guilt and regret rising in his throat. He feels like an unfilial son for leaving her alone when he should have been by her side. However, his father's question snaps him out of his spiral. Seong firmly promises to head straight to his mother's house for dinner, adding a small white lie that he had already planned to leave early. Hearing this, his father's voice softens instantly. He expresses his relief that Seong is stepping up, but before hanging up, he mentions there was something he failed to say yesterday due to the chaos. He brings up the recent duel. That incredible victory Seong pulled off? It was nothing short of magnificent, a true display of strength. Seong smiles, thanking his father for the high praise. With a lighter heart, he ends the call and slides the phone back into his pocket. The guys immediately ask who it was. Seong tells them it was his dad, announcing that he is cutting the night short to spend some quality time with his folks. His friends blink in surprise, clearly caught off guard by this sudden shift in the atmosphere. They remind him of the plan. This was supposed to be an all-night celebration, and he is bailing on them already? Seong stands up, resolute. He insists he has important matters to discuss with his mother, promising that the next round of drinks is on him to make up for it. Seeing his determination, his friends back down with a smile. They tell him not to sweat it. They can always link up another day that works for everyone. As they wave goodbye, Seong leaves the cafe. He feels a warm sense of gratitude, lucky to have brothers who understand him without judgment. Once the door closes, Charlie turns to Ryan with a grin. He calls Seong a lovable fool, noting that he did not need to make excuses. They would never judge him for choosing family. Ryan chuckles, shaking his head in agreement. He watches Seong's retreating figure, quipping that the guy knows them too well. With a smirk, he jokingly labels their departing friend a total mama's boy. Hey everyone. Did you enjoy that chapter? I absolutely loved the character development. If you are hyped to see what happens next, smash that subscribe button for the channel and do not forget to drop a like.